Welcome to tonight's sleep story. Tonight, I invite you to journey far north into a world of icy fjords, deep pine forests, and long winter nights lit only by flickering hearths and shimmering auroras overhead. A world where gods and giants roamed, where brave warriors set sail into the unknown, and where stories were passed from mouth to mouth by poets and skalds, carved into runestones and remembered long after the last Viking ship sailed. This is the story of Norse mythology, from the very first moment of creation, when there was only a great yawning void, to the time of Ragnarok, the end and rebirth of all things. Before we begin, I'd love it if you could take a moment to comment where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is for you there. It's always fascinating to see how people from every corner of the world gather here each night to drift off together to these ancient tales. Now, put your phone on Do Not Disturb. Maybe open a window slightly to let in the cool night air, or turn on a fan for that gentle, calming background hum. Make yourself as comfortable as you can. Adjust your pillow beneath your head. Let your shoulders sink into your mattress, and allow your hands to rest softly by your sides or upon your chest. There is nothing you need to do right now. No tasks to complete, no worries to resolve, no conversations to replay in your mind. For these next few hours, your only role is to listen, to let the story unfold around you, and to allow your mind to drift wherever it wishes. Imagine yourself lying beneath a dark winter sky, the stars shining with a cold, clear brilliance above you. Far in the north, green and violet ribbons of light dance and weave across the heavens. You are wrapped in warm furs, the air crisp against your cheeks, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the low rumble of the sea against the rocks. Tonight, you will hear of gods and giants, of creation and chaos, of mighty Thor with his hammer Mjolnir, of wise Odin who gave up his eye for knowledge, and of Loki, the trickster, whose cleverness shaped fate in ways both wondrous and terrible. You will hear of heroes who crossed seas and worlds, of creatures so vast they encircled the earth, and of a final battle that would end even the gods themselves. But for now, there is only you resting here, and the quiet promise of story to carry you softly into sleep. There is no need to stay awake for every word. These stories will find their way into your dreams, whether your eyes are open or closed. Let them soothe you, ease your thoughts, and bring you the deep rest you deserve. So, take a deep breath in, and let it out slowly. Feel your body grow heavier with each exhale, your mind calmer with each passing moment. Allow yourself to drift as we begin the entire story of Norse mythology, from creation to Ragnar. The creation of the cosmos. In the beginning, before the first dawn, before there were gods or men, before even the earth itself had formed, there was only a vast emptiness. This emptiness was called Ginnungagap, the yawning void. Imagine it now, if you wish. An endless expanse with no sky, no sea, no earth beneath your feet, no stars above your head. Only a boundless chasm stretching beyond thought, silent and still. To the north of Ginnungagap lay Niflheim, a realm of mist and ice. It was a land of biting winds and frozen rivers, of pale frost and swirling fog that hid all things from view. At the very heart of Niflheim was a spring called Hvergelmir, from which flowed 11 rivers known as the Ilivagar. These rivers streamed outward, and as they travelled away from their source, they hardened into great blocks of ice, layering upon each other, creeping closer and closer toward the void. To the south of Ginnungagap lay Muspelheim, a realm of fire and unbearable heat. It was a place of blazing sparks, of flames leaping into the darkness, of molten rivers and burning embers that filled the air with flickering light. Muspelheim was guarded by Surtur, a giant wreathed in fire, who stood watch with his flaming sword, waiting for the day when he would set the worlds alight. Between these two realms, one of freezing cold, the other of searing heat, Ginnungagap lay in silent anticipation. Over time, the ice of Niflheim crept further into the void, and the warmth of Muspelheim reached out to meet it. Where ice and fire came together, great clouds of steam hissed and rose, swirling and thickening within the void. And from this meeting of opposing forces, life began to stir. First was born Ymir, the primordial giant, ancestor of all the giants that would later walk the worlds. He emerged from the melting ice, vast and heavy, with frost still clinging to his limbs. As he opened his eyes for the first time, he found himself alone in the darkness, save for the frozen rivers and rising mists. From the sweat of his armpits, new life began to form. A male and a female giant grew there, nourished by his great body. And from the joining of these two, more giants were born, until their kin filled the shadows of Ginnungagap. Beside him, from the salty ice, came forth another creature, Audhumla, the great cow. She was gentle and vast, her flanks steaming in the cold air. 4 rivers of milk flowed from her udders, and it was from these that Ymir drank, gaining his strength and sustaining his life. But Audhumla too needed nourishment. She turned to the salty blocks of ice and began to lick them. As her rough tongue swept over the frozen surface, something remarkable began to emerge. On the first day of her licking, a man's hair appeared, golden and thick against the blue-white frost. On the second day, his head emerged, and on the third, the rest of his body was freed. This was Buri, the first of the gods. Buri was tall and fair, with strength and grace beyond any of the giants. From Buri came a son, Bor, who in turn took as his wife Bestla, daughter of one of the frost giants. Together, Bor and Bestla had 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. These 3 brothers grew strong and wise, but they looked upon Ymir and his brood with unease. The giants were vast and unruly, their greed and power threatening to swallow all that might be created. And so, Odin, Vili, and Ve resolved to bring about a new order. Together, they rose against Ymir. The battle was fierce and long, shaking the mists of Ginnungagap, echoing through the empty void. At last, they slew him. His blood gushed forth in such torrents that it drowned nearly all of his giant offspring, save for one, Bergelmir, who escaped with his wife in a hollowed tree trunk, and from whom the future race of giants descended. The brothers then dragged Ymir's immense body to the center of Ginnungagap. From his flesh they shaped the earth, laying it out wide beneath them. From his blood they made the oceans and rivers, filling the deep places with water that flowed and surged. His bones they used to raise mountains, jagged and high, and his teeth they scattered as boulders across the lands. They took his skull and lifted it high, creating the dome of the sky, placing it over the new world as a sheltering vault. At each corner, they set a dwarf to hold it up, Nordri in the north, Sudri in the south, Ostri in the east, and Vestri in the west. From the sparks that flew out of Muspelheim, they fashioned the stars, setting them in the sky to cast their cold light upon the world below. His brain they scattered in the air, and it became the clouds drifting across the heavens. His hair became the grass and trees, spreading green across the barren lands, and his eyebrows they placed as a mighty barrier to encircle Midgard, the world of humans, protecting it from the chaotic forces beyond. Thus, the 9 realms came into being. At the very center of all things stood Yggdrasil, the world tree, its roots and branches binding the realms together. There was Asgard, high above, home of the Aesir gods. Below it lay Midgard, the realm of humans, encircled by Ymir's brows. There was Jotunheim, land of the frost giants, and Vanaheim, realm of the Vanir gods. Alfheim was the land of the light elves, while Svartalfheim, also called Nidavellir, was home to the dwarves deep under the earth. Muspelheim burned with endless flame, while Niflheim lay in its eternal frost. And beneath them all was Helheim, where the dead resided under the gaze of Hel, daughter of Loki. From the void and from the corpse lips of Ymir the worlds were made. And from that day forth, the gods shaped their new realm, bringing order from chaos, creating sun and moon to light the heavens, and setting time into motion with the turning of night and day. Thus was the cosmos created, from emptiness to fullness, from silence to song, from darkness to a universe brimming with life. Gods, giants, elves, dwarves, and humans alike, all bound within the great branches of Yggdrasil, and all destined to play their part in the great saga that was only just beginning. Yggdrasil and the Nine Realms. At the very heart of Norse cosmology stands Yggdrasil, the great world tree. Its branches stretch far into the highest heavens, and its roots reach deep into the most hidden realms. It is said that Yggdrasil holds all things together: gods, giants, humans, elves, dwarves, and the dead, binding them in an intricate web of life, death, and destiny. Imagine now this vast ash tree rising out of the center of existence. Its trunk is so immense that no creature could encircle it, and its canopy spreads wide, sheltering the worlds beneath. Its bark is ancient and rough, carved with cracks and grooves like a map of time itself. Its leaves are countless, whispering in winds that carry the thoughts and fates of every being in the Nine Realms. At its highest point lies Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods. Here, golden halls gleam in the eternal light, home to Odin the Allfather, Thor the Thunderer, and Frigg the wise queen. Great feasting halls stand upon the plains of Asgard, such as Valhalla, where the souls of slain warriors, the Einherjar, gather each night to feast and prepare for the battles of Ragnarok. Bifrost, the rainbow bridge shimmering with many colors, stretches between Asgard and Midgard below, guarded ever vigilantly by Heimdall, who sees and hears all that passes upon it. Below Asgard lies Midgard, the world of humans. It is encircled by a great ocean, within which coils Jormungandr, the world serpent, so vast that he bites his own tail, holding the seas in place. Midgard is filled with forests, mountains, rivers, and fields, and it is said to be linked to Asgard by Bifrost, though humans cannot walk upon the bridge without the god's blessing. Far beyond Midgard lies Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, also known as the Jotnar. This is a land of rugged mountains, deep dark forests, and icy plains, where frost giants dwell in their great halls of stone and ice. It is a place wild and untamed, filled with magic and danger, forever standing in opposition to the gods of Asgard. There is also Vanaheim, the realm of the Vanir gods, who are masters of fertility, wisdom, and the ways of nature. They dwell in peaceful halls, surrounded by fertile fields and gentle rivers, their magic flowing through the world like unseen currents. After the Aesir-Vanir War, the two tribes of gods forged peace, exchanging hostages and knowledge to bring balance to the worlds. In the realm of Alfheim dwell the Light Elves, radiant beings of great beauty and grace. Their lands are filled with shimmering light, delicate blossoms, and crystalline waters. They are said to be wiser than humans and more beautiful than the sunlit dawn, moving unseen through Midgard to aid or hinder mortals according to their whims. Beneath the earth lies Svartalfheim, also known as Nidavellir, the realm of the dwarves. It is a land of darkness and stone, lit only by the forge fires burning deep within mountain halls. Here, master craftsmen shape wondrous items of power: Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, Odin's spear, Gungnir, and the golden ring, Draupnir, that multiplies itself. The dwarves are secretive and skillful, their works shaping the fates of gods and men alike. To the south lies Muspelheim, the realm of fire and flame. It burns with unquenchable heat, a land of glowing embers and rivers of molten rock. Fire giants dwell here, under the rule of Surtur, who stands ready with his flaming sword to set all worlds ablaze at Ragnarok's end. To the north lies Niflheim, the realm of mist and ice. It is a place of eternal cold, filled with fog so dense that nothing can be seen beyond a few paces. Rivers of poison flow through its dark lands, freezing into ice as they run. At its deepest point lies Hvergelmir, the roaring spring from which all cold rivers flow. Coiled beside it is the great serpent Nidhogg, who gnaws ceaselessly at the root of Yggdrasil that extends into this realm, spreading rot and decay. And then there is Helheim, a shadowy realm lying beneath Niflheim. Here, in cold and quiet halls, dwell those who died of sickness or old age, ruled by Hel, daughter of Loki. Her half-living, half-dead visage gazes upon the endless procession of souls entering her domain, and her hall, called Eljudnir, stands silent and bleak, with high walls and heavy gates from which none may return. Yggdrasil itself is not merely a tree, but a living being, conscious in ways that no god or mortal can fully comprehend. Its roots drink from 3 sacred wells. The first is Urdabrunner, the Well of Urd, where the Norns dwell. These 3 sisters, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, weave the fates of all creatures, carving runes into Yggdrasil's trunk to record what was, what is, and what is yet to come. The second well is Hvergelmir, from which icy waters and venomous rivers flow, guarded by Nidhogg, who gnaws at Yggdrasil's root with relentless hunger. He is not alone there. Countless serpents coil and writhe through the icy darkness, their venom dripping into the waters below. The third well is Mimisbrunner, the Well of Mimir, found in Jotunheim beneath one of Yggdrasil's great roots. It is a well of deep wisdom, and Mimir himself, wise among all beings, dwells there as its guardian. Odin once sacrificed his own eye into Mimisbrunner to drink from its waters, gaining knowledge and vision beyond any other god. High in the branches of Yggdrasil sits an eagle, whose keen eyes see all that passes below. Between the eagle's eyes perches a hawk named Vedrfolnir, scanning the winds from this lofty throne. At the foot of the tree scurries Ratatoska, a squirrel swift and sly, who carries messages and insults between Nidhogg at the roots and the eagle above. Ever does he dart up and down the trunk, whispering words that fuel their mutual contempt. 4 great stags roam Yggdrasil's branches, nibbling at its tender leaves. Their names are Dain, Dvalin, Dunea, and Durathror. As they feed, they shake dew from the leaves, which falls down to the realms below as refreshing rain. The tree weeps its own dew, known as honeydew, which drips to the earth and sustains the bees. Its life flows through every realm, and every realm gives life back to it in an eternal cycle of growth, decay, and renewal. Yet despite its majesty, Yggdrasil is not immune to harm. Nidhogg's gnawing spreads rot at its base. The stag's constant feeding weakens its boughs. The winds of the 9 realms tear at its leaves. And when Ragnarok comes, even Yggdrasil will tremble, though it will stand through the end and into the rebirth of the worlds. Such is the world tree, the axis of existence, the pillar of all realms. It binds together Asgard's golden halls and Helheim's silent gates, Midgard's forests and Jotunheim's frozen peaks, Alfheim's radiant meadows and Svartalfheim's forges of fire. Its roots drink the waters of wisdom, fate, and venom, and its branches cradle the stars. To speak of Yggdrasil is to speak of all that was, all that is, and all that shall ever be. For as long as the world tree stands, so too do the 9 realms endure, woven together in its vast, eternal embrace. The Aesir and Vanir gods. High above Midgard, within the golden halls of Asgard, dwelled the Aesir, the principal gods of Norse mythology, each woven into the fabric of fate and the cycles of the cosmos. Their stories reveal not only their powers and deeds, but also their flaws, sacrifices, wisdom, and tragedies that shaped the world as it was known. Let us begin with Odin, the Allfather. He is the chief among the gods, ruler of Asgard, and seeker of knowledge above all else. Odin is often depicted as an old man with a long grey beard, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shadows his missing eye. His single eye glows with an unsettling intensity, for he sacrificed the other into Mimir's well to gain wisdom. He sits upon his great throne, Hlidskjalf, from where he can see all 9 realms. Odin is accompanied always by his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, Thought and Memory, who fly across the world each day to bring him news of all that occurs. At his feet lie his 2 wolves, Geri and Freki, whom he feeds with meat from his table. For Odin himself consumes only wine, sustaining himself on its power. But Odin is not merely a ruler. He is a wanderer, a shapeshifter, a seeker of secrets. He learned the runes, the hidden language of creation, by sacrificing himself upon Yggdrasil. For 9 nights, he hung from its branches, pierced by his own spear, denied food and drink, peering into the darkness below until the runes revealed themselves. With this knowledge came power, of magic, of poetry, of fate itself. Beside Odin is Frigg, his wife, queen of Asgard. She is a goddess of foreknowledge and fate, though she speaks little of what she sees. Her halls are quiet and peaceful, a place where she spins clouds across the sky upon her spindle. She is the mother of Baldr, and it was Frigg who once travelled the worlds to extract promises from all things that they would not harm her beloved son. She is associated with domesticity and motherhood, but also with profound wisdom, for she knows many secrets that even Odin does not. Then there is Thor, the thunder god, son of Odin and the earth goddess Jord. He is the strongest of the gods, protector of Midgard, wielder of Mjolnir, his mighty hammer that strikes with the force of lightning. Thor is depicted as a huge, red-bearded man, quick to anger, but good-hearted and courageous. He rides across the sky in his chariot pulled by 2 goats, Tangrisnir and Tangnjosta, whose hooves spark thunder upon the clouds. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was forged by the dwarves Brokkr and Sindri, and it never misses its mark. It is so heavy that only Thor can wield it, and it returns to his hand after every throw. He also wears the iron gloves Jarngriper to handle it, and the belt Megingjord, which doubles his already immense strength. Thor spends much of his time in Jotunheim, battling giants to keep Midgard safe, and his fierce devotion to duty earned him the love of gods and men alike. Baldr, son of Odin and Frigg, is the most beloved among the gods. He is beautiful beyond compare, radiant with a light that lifts the hearts of all who look upon him. He is associated with dreams, purity, innocence, and love. Baldur's Hall is called Breidablik, and it is said that nothing impure can exist within its walls. Yet his life is marked by tragedy, for he dreamt of his own death, and his death would signal the coming of Ragnarok. Frigg, fearing the loss of her son, travelled to every being and object in the 9 realms, extracting promises that they would never harm Baldr. Fire, water, iron, stone, animals, plants and diseases all swore oaths. But she overlooked one thing: the small, unassuming mistletoe, thinking it too young and weak to cause harm. Loki would one day use this oversight to bring about Baldr's doom. Tyr is another of the Aesir, a god of war and justice. Unlike Thor's brute strength or Odin's cunning magic, Tyr is known for his courage and honor. He is most famous for his role in binding Fenrir, the monstrous wolf son of Loki. When the gods sought to chain Fenrir, the wolf demanded proof of their goodwill. Tyr alone dared place his hand within Fenrir's jaws as a pledge. When the dwarves' magical binding, Gleipnir, held fast, Fenrir realized he had been deceived and bit off Tyr's hand at the wrist. From that day, Tyr became the one-handed god, but also the god most trusted to mediate oaths and treaties, for he understood sacrifice in the name of justice. Heimdall is the watchman of the gods, guardian of Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connects Midgard to Asgard. He is described as shining with great radiance and is sometimes called the White God. Heimdall possesses senses so keen that he can hear the grass grow and see for hundreds of leagues, even in darkness. He requires little sleep, and his horn, Gjallarhorn, sits ready by his side. When he blows it, its sound will echo through all realms, signaling the beginning of Ragnarok. Heimdall was born of 9 mothers, all sisters, and raised at the edge of the world, his blood imbued with the sea and the strength of the earth. Among the Vanir gods are Njord, Freya, and Freyja. Njord is god of the sea, winds, and wealth. Fishermen and sailors pray to him for safe passage, for he can calm the waves and bring favorable winds. Njord once married Skadi, the giantess of winter and mountains, but theirs was an uneasy union. Skadi loved the snowy peaks, while Njord longed for the salty scent of the sea. They lived 9 nights in Skadi's mountain hall, then 9 nights by Njord's shore. In the end, neither could bear the other's home, and they parted ways. Njord's son is Freyja, god of fertility, prosperity, sunshine, and fair weather. He rules over rain, harvests, and peace, and his blessings were invoked to ensure good crops and strong kin. Freyja rides upon a shining boar named Gullinbursti, whose golden bristles light his path. He also owns the ship Skidbladnir, crafted by dwarves, which always has a fair wind and can be folded up to fit into his pocket. Freyja fell in love with the giantess Gerda, and he gave up his sword to win her hand, a decision that would one day cost him dearly at Ragnarok. Freyja, sister of Freyja, is among the most powerful and beloved of goddesses. She is goddess of love, beauty, fertility, and also of war and death. Half of those slain in battle are chosen by Freyja to reside in her hall, Sessrumnir, while the other half go to Odin's Valhalla. Freyja rides a chariot pulled by 2 large cats, wears the necklace Brisingamen crafted by dwarves, and has a cloak of falcon feathers that allows her to fly between worlds. She is also a practitioner of Seda, the magic of fate weaving, which she taught to Odin himself. The Aesir and Vanir were not always at peace. Long ago, they waged war upon each other, for the Vanir distrusted the Aesir's ways, and the Aesir envied the Vanir's wisdom and fertility magic. Their war shook the realms, but in the end, a truce was made. As part of the peace, they exchanged hostages. Njord and his children Freyr and Freyja came to Asgard, while Mimir and Honir were sent to Vanaheim. Thus, the 2 tribes of gods were united, their powers complementing each other to maintain balance across the 9 realms. Odin, Thor, Frigg, Baldr, Tyr, Heimdall, Njord, Freyja, and Freyja. Each god and goddess held dominion over parts of life, nature, magic, and fate. Yet they were not distant deities. They walked among giants, elves, dwarves, and men. They loved, fought, feasted, and wept. They were honored with offerings at great stone altars, remembered in poetry and sagas, and carved into runestones that stand silent in northern forests to this day. Their stories remind us that power often comes with sacrifice, that wisdom is born from pain, and that even gods must one day face their destiny. For while they ruled in splendor from Asgard's shining halls, each knew that Ragnarok awaited them, the twilight where their strength would be tested beyond all measure. Loki and His Children. Among the gods of Asgard, there was one whose name stirred both curiosity and unease. Loki. Neither fully god nor fully giant, Loki was born in Jotunheim to the giant Farbauti and his wife Laufey, often called Nal. From the beginning, Loki was different, clever beyond measure, quick with words, swift of foot, and possessed of a cunning mind that could weave lies into truths and truths into lies. He came to Asgard as a companion of Odin, who, recognizing his intellect and unpredictable nature, made Loki his blood brother. This bond was sealed by their mingled blood, and thus Loki gained a place among the Aesir. Yet while he sat beside the gods in council and drank with them in their feasting halls, his heart was always half hidden, his motives layered like mist upon the morning sea. Loki was handsome, with bright eyes and a sly smile that could charm even the sternest of warriors. He possessed the ability to shapeshift into any form he desired. A salmon, a horse, a fly, an elderly woman, or another god entirely. He used this power to aid the gods when it suited him, but also to bring mischief, confusion, and at times tragedy upon them. Many are the tales of Loki's cunning. It was he who tricked the dwarves Brokkr and Sindri into crafting treasures for the gods. Odin's spear, Gungnir, Freya's ship, Skidbladnir, and Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. When Mjolnir emerged with a shortened handle due to Loki's meddling, it nonetheless became the mightiest weapon in all the realms. It was Loki who once sheared off Sif's golden hair as a prank, enraging Thor so deeply that he threatened to break every bone in Loki's body until he promised to replace it with hair of pure gold, which grew as naturally as the original. And it was Loki who saved the gods from ruin many times with his quick wit, even as he often created the problems himself. Yet beneath his humor lay a darker nature, for Loki was a creature of chaos. His lineage, too, reflected this. With his wife Sigurd, Loki had 2 sons, Vali and Nafi. But it was with the giantess Angrboda, whose name means bringer of grief, that Loki fathered 3 children, whose birth sent ripples of fear through Asgard and beyond. The first was Fenrir, the great wolf. From the moment of his birth in Jotunheim, he grew at an alarming rate, his hunger insatiable, his strength immeasurable. The gods, seeing his size and knowing the prophecies that foretold his role in their doom, decided to bring him to Asgard to keep him under their watch. There, he roamed freely for a time, playing among the Aesir, yet always watched with wary eyes. Only Tyr, the god of war and justice, dared approach him without fear, feeding him each day and earning his trust. But as Fenrir continued to grow, the gods knew they could no longer leave him unbound. They attempted to chain him with iron fetters, but Fenrir shattered them as if they were straw. At last, Odin sent for the dwarves of Svartalfheim, who forged a magical binding called Gleipnir. It was fashioned from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird, and the sinews of a bear. Gleipnir appeared as a soft silken ribbon, but it was stronger than any chain forged by gods or men. When they approached Fenrir with Gleipnir, he grew suspicious. Sensing deceit, he demanded that one of the gods place their hand in his mouth as a sign of good faith. None would step forward until Tyr, loyal and honorable, laid his right hand between the wolf's jaws. As the binding tightened and Fenrir realized he had been trapped, he clamped his teeth down, severing Tyr's hand at the wrist. From that day, Tyr bore his wound with grim honor, and Fenrir lay bound upon an isolated plain, with a sword driven into his jaws to keep them open. He howled with such fury that rivers of saliva became streams of venom flowing across the rocks. There he waits, growing ever angrier, until Ragnarok comes and his chains break at last. Loki's second child with Angrboda was Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. Cast into the sea by Odin to keep him away from the world of gods and men, Jormungandr grew so large that he encircled the entire earth, biting his own tail beneath the waves. From the ocean depths, his vast coils churn the currents and stir storms upon the seas. It is said that when Jormungandr releases his tail, Ragnarok will begin, and he will rise from the waters to poison sky and earth alike. Thor and Jormungandr crossed paths long before that fated battle. In one tale, Thor went fishing with the giant Hymir. As bait, Thor tore off the head of Hymir's largest ox and cast his line into the deep. Jormungandr took the bait, and Thor pulled with all his might, hauling the serpent's massive head above the waves. The sea boiled, and the earth shook as Thor raised his hammer to strike. But Hymir, fearing the doom of the world, cut the line, and Jormungandr sank back beneath the waves, his eyes blazing with hatred for Thor. ever after. The third child born to Loki and Angerboda was Hel, half dead and half living. Her face and body were divided. One side appeared as a living, beautiful woman. The other side was that of a corpse, pallid and decaying. The gods, fearing her power, cast her down into the realm of Niflheim, where she became queen of the dead. Her hall was called Eljudnir, her dish hunger, her knife famine. The threshold of her realm was called Falandafarad, falling to peril, and her bed was named Kor, meaning illness. There she ruled over those who died of sickness or old age, giving them a cold and shadowy afterlife within her silent kingdom. Despite Loki's blood brotherhood with Odin, the gods came to distrust him deeply, for his actions were ever unpredictable. He was both friend and foe, helper and betrayer. His cunning brought gifts to the gods, yet also their greatest griefs. His final betrayal came with the death of Baldr. When Frigg had won promises from all things never to harm Baldr, the gods turned this into a game, throwing weapons and stones at him to watch them bounce harmlessly away. Loki, jealous of Baldr's perfection, disguised himself as an old woman and asked Frigg whether she had truly secured oaths from every being. Frigg revealed that she had overlooked the mistletoe. Loki fashioned a dart from this plant and guided the blind god Hoder's hand to throw it, piercing Baldr through the heart. After Baldr's death, Loki fled Asgard. The gods hunted him relentlessly until he was found hiding as a salmon in a mountain stream. Thor caught him, and he was bound with the entrails of his son Nafi, whom Loki himself was forced to watch be torn apart. A venomous serpent was placed above him, dripping poison onto his face. His loyal wife Sigurd sits by his side to this day, catching the venom in a bowl. Yet when she must empty it, drops fall upon Loki, and his writhing in agony causes earthquakes throughout Midgard. There he remains, bound in pain and fury until the day of Ragnarok. Then, it is said, his bonds will break, and Loki will lead the armies of chaos, the giants, the dead, and his own monstrous children, against the gods in the final battle. He will face Heimdall, and the two will slay each other, their deaths marking the twilight of the gods. Loki's story is a reminder of duality, of light and shadow entwined. He was neither wholly evil nor wholly good, but rather a force of chaos, change, and transformation. His cunning birthed both marvels and tragedies. Through his children, the world's end was set in motion, for Fenrir will devour Odin, Jormungandr will slay and be slain by Thor, and Hel's legions will rise to claim their place upon the battlefields of Ragnarok. And so the gods of Asgard, though mighty and wise, could never escape the shaping hand of Loki, nor the fate that his children carried within them from the moment of their birth. The Dwarves and Elves. In the world shaped from Ymir's vast corpse, not only gods, giants, and humans dwelled, but also other beings who lived in realms of their own, hidden away in shadows or shining with otherworldly light. Among these were the Dwarves and Elves, each with their own nature, craft, and place in the great weave of Norse cosmology. Let us first turn to the Dwarves. Their origin lies in the very body of Ymir. After the three brothers, Odin, Vili, and Ve, slew the primordial giant and shaped the 9 realms from his flesh, strange beings began to move and stir within his cold, dead body. At first, they were little more than maggots feeding upon the giant's decaying flesh, writhing in the dark spaces beneath the earth. But as the gods beheld them, they granted them consciousness and form, turning them into the beings known as dwarves. The dwarves, also called Dvergar, took to the darkness beneath the mountains, away from the bright sun, which they despised. Their skin was pale or dark as stone, their eyes glimmered like gems, and their beards grew thick and coarse. They were short of stature, but strong of arm, with broad hands perfect for working metal and stone. Within their cavernous halls, illuminated by flickering forge fires, they built mighty realms beneath Midgard, their greatest realm being Nidavellir, also called Svartalfheim, the land of the Black Elves, or Dwarves. The Dwarves are best known for their unmatched skills as smiths and craftsmen. They worked with stone, iron, gold, and all manner of rare materials found deep in the roots of mountains, shaping them into objects of power and beauty that not even the gods themselves could replicate. It was the dwarves Brokkr and Sindri who forged Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. This was no ordinary weapon. Its short handle, caused by Loki's sabotage during its forging, never diminished its power. It could level mountains, summon lightning, and return to Thor's hand after each throw. It became the protector of gods and men against giants and monsters alike. These same dwarves forged Odin's spear, Gungnir, a weapon that would never miss its target and would always return to his grasp. They forged Draupnir, the golden ring that dripped 8 new rings of equal weight every 9 nights, symbolizing unending wealth and prosperity. For Freyr, they created Gullinbursti, the golden bristled boar that could run faster than any steed, day or night, across land, sea, or sky, its radiant bristles lighting the path ahead. They also made Skidbladnir, the ship that could carry all the gods at once, always caught a favorable wind, and yet could be folded small enough to fit in a pocket. Another group of dwarves, Ivaldi's sons, crafted Sif's golden hair after Loki sheared it off as a cruel prank. This hair, made from threads of pure gold, grew naturally upon her head as real hair would. They too created Freya's mighty ship and Odin's spear, and their works brought wonder and power to Asgard. But not all dwarves lived to serve the gods. Many kept to their own affairs in hidden halls beneath the mountains, amassing treasures of gold and jewels, crafting blades imbued with curses, and weaving spells into metalwork for their own secret purposes. Some tales tell of dwarves who became consumed by greed, hoarding gold beyond measure. One such story is that of Andvari, a dwarf who lived beneath a waterfall and could transform into a fish to hide his hoard. Loki, seeking gold to ransom his life after killing the son of Hreidmar, captured Andvari and forced him to yield all his treasure. As Andvari handed over the last of his gold, he cursed it so that whoever possessed it would meet ruin and death. This cursed gold would pass from Hreidmar to Fafnir, who became a dragon to guard it, and then to Sigurd, who slew Fafnir, each owner meeting their doom as foretold. Dwarves were also deeply involved in magic, particularly runic magic and curses. They carved runes into their weapons, rings, and amulets, infusing them with protection, destruction, or greed's endless hunger. They were secretive of their arts, and few outsiders ever saw their works being forged. Their realms were said to be filled with echoing hammer strikes, the clang of anvils, the hiss of quenching steel, and the glow of forge fires reflecting off walls embedded with quartz and gold veins. Great halls supported by carved stone pillars stretched for miles underground, lined with chests of uncounted riches, suits of golden armor, and weapons resting in silent anticipation of hands worthy to wield them. Now let us turn to the elves, who were very different from dwarves in both nature and realm. There are 2 kinds of elves spoken of in Norse myth: the light elves, or ljósalfar, and the dark elves, sometimes considered synonymous with dwarves under the name Svartalfar, though some traditions hold them to be distinct. The light elves dwelled in Alfheim, a realm of ethereal beauty granted to Freyr as a teething gift when he was still a child. Alfheim was described as a land of shimmering light, where the air itself glowed with a silver radiance. Its meadows were strewn with flowers that never wilted, and its trees bore fruits of crystal sweetness. Streams of pure water wove through the land, their ripples singing in gentle music. The light elves were radiant beings, fairer than the sunlit dawn, with an inner glow that marked them as semi-divine. They were guardians of beauty, inspiration, and art, sometimes aiding humans with gentle gifts of creativity, healing, or fertility. Farmers prayed to them for good harvests, and craftsmen invoked their inspiration for delicate works. They moved lightly, often unseen, though legends tell of rare encounters where an elf's presence would leave a human blessed with poetry, music, or knowledge of herbs and healing. The Dark Elves, or Durkalfar, dwelled beneath the earth in places of shadows and deep rock. They were said to be swarthy, dark-skinned, or even shadow-like in their forms, secretive and often unfriendly to humans. Some tales speak of them as mischievous or cruel, causing nightmares or stealing away sleeping children. Others speak of them as guardians of hidden knowledge, weaving magic that even gods approached with caution. It is unclear whether the Dark Elves and Dwarves were truly the same, for the sources differ. Some sagas treat Svartalfar as another name for dwarves, dwelling in Svartalfheim. Others maintain that the Dark Elves were a separate race altogether, with their own shadowy halls and hidden purposes. Elves were associated with the forces of nature, fertility, and fate. Rituals were performed to honor them, often at sacred groves or elf mounds known as Alphablot, seeking their favor for protection, healing, or prosperity. To offend them was to risk illness or misfortune, for their blessings were as powerful as their curses. The elves and dwarves together represented the hidden peoples of the world, unseen yet ever present, shaping fate from behind veils of stone or mist. Where dwarves shaped metal into treasures and weapons of power, elves shaped beauty, art, and the subtle magics of life and growth. Thus, in the 9 realms, beyond the feasting halls of Asgard, the icy plains of Jotunheim, and the forests and seas of Midgard, lay worlds hidden and secret. Beneath mountains, dwarves forged the fate-bound gifts of gods. Beneath hills and within glowing meadows, elves wove light into art and song. Both peoples remind us that not all power is seen, and not all stories are sung aloud. Some dwell beneath, hidden from the gaze of gods and men, shaping creation quietly with every hammer strike or whispered rune, their works enduring long after their names are forgotten. For while gods ruled and giants raged, it was often the dwarves and elves who shaped the objects that decided battles, the curses that toppled kings, and the beauty that inspired poetry for 1,000 years. Myths of Thor and the Giants. Of all the gods who strode through the 9 realms, none were as deeply entwined with the fate of the giants as Thor, son of Odin and Jord, the earth goddess. While Odin ruled through wisdom, runes, and quiet cunning, Thor ruled through might, thunder, and the unbreakable force of his will. His very presence was like a storm rolling across the plains, and among the Jotnar, the giants, his name was spoken with dread. Thor was a towering figure, broad-shouldered, with a thick red beard and eyes like the sky before lightning strikes. Upon his brow sat a simple iron helm, and around his waist he wore Megingjord, the belt that doubled his already colossal strength. Upon his hands he wore Jarngriper, iron gloves forged by dwarves to allow him to grip his greatest weapon, Mjolnir, the hammer that could crush mountains to rubble and that always returned to his grasp. Thor's life was spent in constant journeys to Jotunheim, for it was his duty to protect gods and humans from the threat of the giants. Though not all giants were evil, many were wild forces of chaos who sought to unseat the order established by the gods. Thor was their counterbalance, the immovable wall against which their ambitions shattered. One of the most famous tales of Thor's travels is his journey to the hall of Utgard Loki, a giant king known for his illusions and cunning magic. Thor set out with Loki and 2 human servants, Thjalfi and Roskva, crossing the wilderness until they came upon a vast forest. There they encountered a giant asleep upon the ground, so massive that his snores shook the trees like a hurricane. This was Skrymir, though Thor at first did not know his name. That night, they shared Skrymir's company beneath an ancient oak. Thor tried 3 times to kill him as he slept, bringing Mjolnir down upon his head with all his might. Each time, Skrymir awoke only briefly, thinking perhaps an acorn had fallen or a bird had perched upon his brow. then fell back asleep. In truth, Skrimir was moving his head away by magic, and Thor's blows struck deep hollows into the earth beside him. The next day, they parted ways, and Thor and his companions came at last to Utgard, the giant's stronghold. There, Utgard Loki greeted them with laughter, unimpressed by Thor's fame. He challenged them to prove themselves with tests. First, Loki was asked to compete in an eating contest against a giant named Logi. They were each given a trough full of meat stretching the length of the hall. Loki devoured the meat quickly, but Logi ate not only the meat but also the bones and the trough itself, for Logi was wildfire incarnate, consuming all before it. Next, Thjalfi was to race against Hugi, who ran so swiftly that Thjalfi could not keep pace. For Hugi was the personification of thought, swifter than any mortal foot. Finally, Thor himself was challenged. He was asked to drink from a horn that, unknown to him, reached out to the sea. Though he drank with all his strength, he could only lower the level by a small measure. But the gods later saw that his drinking had caused tides to ebb across the entire ocean. Then he was asked to lift a cat from the floor. Thor reached down, straining with all his godly might, but could lift only one paw from the ground. The cat, however, was Jormungandr in disguise, the serpent that encircled the world, and even to move a part of it was a feat beyond comprehension. Finally, Thor was asked to wrestle an old woman named Ellie. He grappled with her for hours, but she brought him to one knee. For Ellie was old age itself, against whom no being can stand forever. Utgard Loki revealed these illusions before sending Thor and his companions away, fearing his true strength should he strike in anger. Thor raised Mjolnir to destroy the hall, but it vanished, an illusion upon the wind. This story showed that even Thor, the mightiest of gods, was humbled by magic, illusion, and truths hidden beneath appearances. Another tale tells of Thrym, king of the frost giants, who stole Mjolnir and buried it 8 leagues under the earth. He sent word to Asgard that he would only return the hammer if Freya was given to him as his bride. The gods, horrified, devised a plan. At Heimdall's cunning suggestion, Thor was disguised as Freya herself, draped in bridal linens and necklaces, with a veil covering his fierce eyes. Loki, ever the shapeshifter and schemer, disguised himself as the handmaiden and accompanied Freya to Jotunheim. When Thrym saw Thor in his bridal veil, he rejoiced, ordering a feast in honor of his wedding. As the giant watched, Freya consumed an entire ox, 8 salmon, all the delicacies set before her, and drank 3 horns of mead in a single draught. Thrym, bewildered, commented upon his bride's ferocity, but Loki quickly whispered that she had not eaten or slept for 8 nights, so great was her longing to join her husband. When Thrym lifted the veil to kiss his bride, he beheld eyes blazing with rage. He recoiled in fear, but it was too late. Mjolnir was brought forth to bless the wedding, and Thor seized it in his hand. With roaring fury, he struck down Thrym and all his kin, leaving none alive, reclaiming his hammer and the honor of the gods in a single thunderous stroke. Yet Thor's dealings with giants were not only of violence. There is the story of Skadi, daughter of the giant Thiazi. When Thiazi was slain by the Aesir for stealing Idun and her apples of immortality, Skadi came to Asgard to claim vengeance. The gods, seeking peace, offered her gold in compensation, but she refused. They offered her marriage to one of the gods instead, allowing her to choose her husband by looking only at their feet. Skadi had hoped to choose Baldr, the most beautiful of gods, but instead chose Njord, god of the sea, mistaking his strong, sea-worn feet for Baldr's. Their marriage, however, was strained. Skadi loved the cold mountains of her father's home, while Njord loved the salty sea. They tried to share their lives, spending 9 nights in Skadi's halls, then 9 by Njord's shore. But the howling of wolves in the mountains kept Njord awake, and Skadi found the cries of seagulls and crashing waves unbearable. At last, they agreed to part, each returning to their own realm, forever sundered by the nature of their hearts. Thor's journeys to Jotunheim continued throughout his life. Each trip was a test of his strength, courage, and sense of justice. He was never a subtle god. His solutions were direct, his fury terrible, but his intentions were always pure. He was the protector, not only of Asgard, but of Midgard, and humans honored him with offerings of goats, ale, and stone altars built upon hills to call upon his might in times of thunder and storm. In one lesser-known tale, Thor met a giantess named Grid while on his way to face Geirrod, a giant who sought his death. Grid warned Thor that Geirrod had prepared a trap for him, and she lent him 3 magical gifts: a belt of strength, iron gloves, and her own staff. When Thor arrived at Geirrod's hall, the giant hurled molten iron at him, but Thor caught it upon Grid's staff and flung it back, piercing the giant through his stone pillar throne, killing him instantly. In all these myths, Thor's role is clear. He is the eternal bulwark against chaos. The giants are forces of primal nature: wild mountains, roaring seas, freezing winds, searing fires. Thor is the force that holds them at bay, ensuring that Midgard remains a realm where humans can live and thrive. Without Thor's unending vigilance, giants would flood the world, devouring all order and bringing about an age of darkness long before Ragnarok. His hammer, Mjolnir, became a symbol not only of divine might, but also of protection, fertility, and blessing. It was worn as an amulet by warriors and farmers alike, carved upon runestones, and used in sacred rituals to hallow marriages, births, and funerals. To invoke Thor's name was to call upon strength, courage, and steadfastness in the face of all that threatens life's fragile order. Thus, from the halls of Utgard Loki to the frozen wedding feasts of Thrym, from the mountain homes of Skadi to the storm-tossed seas where Jormungandr sleeps, Thor's presence was felt everywhere that gods and giants met. He remains the thunder that rolls across the northern skies, the lightning that shatters darkness, and the eternal reminder that even when chaos rages at the edges of existence, there is always a force that stands firm to guard the world from destruction. The Death of Baldr. Among the gods of Asgard, none was as beloved as Baldr, son of Odin and Frigg. He was the god of light, beauty, joy, purity, and dreams, and it was said that wherever Baldr walked, darkness fled before him, and flowers opened their blossoms to greet his passing. His presence was like the first sunrise after a long winter, filling the world with warmth and hope. Baldr's hall was called Breidablik, which means broad gleaming. It stood in Asgard, shining with a brilliance untouched by evil. No untruth could ever pass its threshold, and within its walls there was only peace and harmony. His wife was Nanna, a goddess known for her gentle spirit and loyalty, and their son was Forseti, god of justice and reconciliation, who resolved disputes among gods and men alike. But though Baldr radiated life and beauty, his dreams were troubled. Night after night, visions of his own death came to him, dark shadows creeping over his shining world, a chill that stole the warmth from his skin, an endless silence descending upon all that he loved. Each morning he woke, heart heavy with a dread he could not name. Seeing her son's sorrow, Frigg grew deeply worried. She knew that dreams in Asgard often spoke of fate, and she resolved to protect Baldr by any means necessary. Mounting her chariot, she traveled through the 9 realms, seeking oaths from all things that they would never harm her son. She spoke with fire, and fire swore not to burn him. She spoke with water, and water promised never to drown him. She gained vows from iron and stone, from every beast and bird, from trees, plants, and diseases. Even poisons and metals gave their word that they would never hurt Baldr. When Frigg returned to Asgard, she declared her success, and the gods rejoiced. With this newfound invulnerability, Baldr's spirits lifted, and the gods turned his protection into a game. In the great courtyard of Asgard, they gathered to test his safety. They hurled spears at him, swung axes and swords, cast rocks, shot arrows, but nothing could wound him. Each weapon fell harmlessly away, leaving Baldr standing unharmed and smiling amid their laughter. Among those watching was Loki. He saw the joy in their eyes, their relief and celebration of Baldr's invincibility, and within Loki's heart, dark envy stirred. He resented Baldr's perfection, his beauty, his beloved status among gods and men. Hatred and curiosity alike burned within him, wondering whether there truly was nothing in all the worlds that could harm this shining god. Taking the form of an old woman, Loki approached Frigg as she sat by her spinning wheel, weaving clouds into sky above Asgard. He spoke gently, asking about the source of Baldr's protection. Frigg, thinking the old woman harmless, revealed how she had gained promises from all things, save for one small plant, the mistletoe. It seemed too young, too slender, too insignificant to pose any threat, she said with a tired smile. With this knowledge, Loki left her side, his thoughts swirling with dark purpose. He wandered beyond Asgard's walls until he found mistletoe growing, pale green and ghostly white, clinging to the branches of an ancient oak. He cut a slender shoot, its wood light and flexible, and fashioned from it a spear or dart, small yet sharp. Returning to the courtyard, Loki saw that the gods were still amusing themselves with their sport. Among them stood Hoder, Baldr's brother, who was blind. Loki approached him, placing a comforting hand upon his shoulder. "Why do you not join in the game?" he asked softly. "I cannot see where Baldr stands," Hoder replied. "I would not wish to miss and strike another." "Fear not," said Loki. "I will guide your hand. Take this dart and aim it as I tell you." And so, trusting his brother's friend, Hod took the mistletoe dart. Loki guided his arm, whispered the aim into his ear, and Hod cast the dart through the laughing crowd. It flew true, striking Baldr in the chest. Instantly, the god of light fell silent. The laughter ceased. Where he had stood shining moments before, now he lay lifeless upon the ground, the slender mistletoe shaft piercing his heart. The gods stood frozen in horror. None could speak, for the grief was too deep for words. Nanna rushed to his side, her tears falling upon his still face. Hoder fell to his knees, sobbing in blind despair as he realized what he had done. Only Loki stood apart, a small, dark smile playing upon his lips before he slipped away into the shadows. They prepared a funeral pyre upon Baldr's great ship, Hringhorni, the largest vessel ever built. But when they tried to push it into the sea, it would not move. Seeing their struggle, they called upon the giantess Hirokin from Jotunheim. Riding upon a great wolf bridled with serpents, she arrived, dismounted, and pushed the ship with such force that flames erupted upon the rollers beneath it, and the earth quaked. Upon the ship they laid Baldr's body, adorned with fine cloths, jewels, and weapons. Nanna, overcome by grief, collapsed upon her husband's chest and died there. The gods laid her body beside his, and Odin placed Draupnir, his golden ring, upon Baldr's breast as a final gift. Thor blessed the pyre with Mjolnir, but as he did so, a dwarf named Lit ran before him, and in anger at the interruption, Thor kicked him into the flames, where he burned with the rest. As the pyre burned and the ship drifted out to sea, all creation wept. The firelight flickered across the waves, reflecting in the eyes of gods and giants alike, and even the stones were said to shed tears for Baldr's passing. But Odin, knowing there might still be hope, sent another son, Hermod the Bold, to ride to Helheim and plead for Baldr's return. Hermod mounted Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, and rode for 9 nights through dark valleys, deep shadows, and whispering winds. At last he reached the gates of Helheim, guarded by the pale and silent Hel. She received him coldly, listening to his plea. Hermod explained the grief of the gods, how all creation mourned for Baldr. Hel considered his words and said, "If all things weep for him, I will release him to return to Asgard, but if any refuse, he shall remain with me." Hermod returned to Asgard with this message, and Odin's ravens flew forth to spread the command across the 9 realms. All things wept: gods and giants, dwarves and elves, beasts and birds, trees and stones, metals and poisons. But in a dark cave, they came upon a giantess named Thok, who sat unmoved by their tears. "Let hell hold what she has," she rasped. "I weep not for Baldr. Neither in life nor death did he bring me joy." And so Baldr remained in Helheim. Some say Thok was Loki in disguise, sealing his cruelty with finality. The gods returned to Asgard, their hearts heavy with sorrow. Baldr's death marked the first sign that Ragnarok approached, the end of the gods and the world as they knew it. Odin knew that the loss of Baldr was not only a tragedy of love, but a blow to the very fabric of fate. For Baldr was light, hope, and renewal, and his absence left a shadow upon all realms. And thus, the death of Baldr became a wound upon the world, a reminder that even gods cannot escape fate. His beauty lay silent in Hell's halls, his dreams stilled forever, until the day when the world would end and be remade anew, and Baldr would walk once more beneath the green sun of a reborn earth. The Prophecy of Ragnarok. Throughout the halls of Asgard and across the 9 realms, whispers of fate flowed like hidden rivers beneath stone. Among all prophecies ever spoken, none filled the gods with such dread as the foretelling of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the end of the world as it was known, and the rebirth that would follow. The knowledge of Ragnarok came from the Völuspá, the prophecy of the seeress. Odin, ever hungry for wisdom, once descended to the deep realms of Helheim to awaken a long-dead Volva, a seeress, from her grave. He asked her to speak of the past, the present, and the future. She spoke of creation, the birth of Ymir, and the shaping of the 9 realms. But then her voice darkened as she spoke of the end. She told of Fimbulwinter, the mighty winter that would herald the coming doom. It would be a winter unlike any before. Snow would fall from all corners of the sky, fierce and unending. The winds would howl across the plains, and the cold would pierce to the bones of every living creature. There would be no spring to follow this winter, nor summer to follow that. 3 such winters would come, one after another, without relief. The world would lie locked in ice, crops would fail, animals would perish, and even the gods would feel hunger gnawing at their halls. In Midgard, humanity would turn against itself. Brothers would slay brothers. Fathers and sons would fight to the death. The bonds of kinship and honor would be forgotten. Oaths would be broken, and lawlessness would spread like plague. The Völuspá called this age of moral decay the Axe Age, Sword Age, Shields are riven, Wind Age, Wolf Age, before the world falls. Then would come the breaking of chains. Loki, bound beneath the earth in agony since Baldr's death, would finally tear free from his bonds. The serpent's venom dripping upon his face would no longer hold him. Fenrir, the mighty wolf, bound with Gleipnir upon the plains, would strain and roar until the silken chains snapped like gossamer thread. His howls would shake the skies, and he would set forth upon the world, jaws gaping so wide that his lower jaw scraped the earth while his upper jaw tore through the heavens. Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, would stir in the ocean's deepest trenches. The seas would churn and boil as he uncoiled his massive body, rising above the waves, spewing venom that would poison both sea and sky. Storms would rage upon the oceans, and the ships of men would be torn asunder, carried upon waves higher than mountains. In Muspelheim, the fire giants would march, led by Surtur, the ancient flame-bearer. His sword burned brighter than the sun, and wherever he passed, the world was set aflame. He would lead his legions across Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, which would shatter beneath their weight, falling into shards of light and crystal rain. Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, would see the armies approaching long before they reached Asgard. He would raise Gjallarhorn to his lips and blow with all his might. The sound would echo across the 9 realms, a note of warning that all living beings would hear in their bones. Gods, giants, dwarves, elves, and men would feel the trembling of fate in that horn's cry. The gods would gather for battle upon the plains of Vigrid, a field stretching 100 leagues in every direction. Odin would don his golden helmet and take up Gungnir, his spear that never missed its mark. Upon Sleipnir, his 8-legged horse, he would ride to face his doom. Thor would stand beside him, Mjolnir clenched in his fist, lightning crackling along its rune-etched surface. Tyr, though one-handed, would bear his sword for the last time. Freyr, lacking his enchanted sword given up to win the love of Gerda, would arm himself with an antler. Heimdall would stand ready with his shining blade, his senses alert to every movement upon the battlefield. Then the sky would split asunder, and from Jotunheim would pour forth the giants, roaring with fury against the gods who had long held them at bay. From Helheim, the legions of the dead would rise, led by Hel herself, their hollow eyes and silent mouths hungering for life lost. The final battle would begin. Odin would face Fenrir, the wolf he once sought to bind. Gungnir would fly, striking true, but Fenrir would shrug off its blow. With a snap of his massive jaws, he would swallow Odin whole, ending the life of the Allfather. But Odin's death would not go unavenged. His son Vidar, the silent god, would step forward wearing a special shoe crafted from all the scraps of leather ever discarded by shoemakers. With this unbreakable shoe, he would brace Fenrir's lower jaw, seize the upper jaw with his powerful hands, and tear the wolf's mouth apart, slaying the beast that devoured his father. Thor would face Jormungandr. The storm god and the world serpent, eternal foes, would clash with fury that shook the heavens and the earth alike. Thor would bring Mjolnir crashing down upon Jormungandr's skull, shattering bone and scale, slaying the serpent at last. But as he stepped back, triumphant, Jormungandr's venom would fill his lungs, and Thor would take 9 steps before collapsing, lifeless upon the field. Tyr would face Garm, the monstrous hound of hell. The god of war and the guardian beast would slay each other in mutual destruction. Heimdall and Loki, ancient rivals bound by fate, would meet at last in deadly combat. Each would land a killing blow upon the other, falling side by side upon the blood-soaked earth. Freyr would face Surtur, but without his enchanted sword, he would be no match for the fire giant's burning blade. He would fall, and Surtur would set the world aflame. Flames would rise higher than the clouds, consuming forests, mountains, and seas. Smoke would darken the sky, and the sun would disappear in a haze of ash and soot. The 9 realms would tremble and collapse. Stars would fall from the heavens like sparks from a dying fire. The earth would sink into the sea, swallowed by rising waves. The world would end in fire and water, and all would seem lost. But from destruction comes rebirth. The Völuspá speaks also of what follows Ragnarok. As the waters recede, a new world would rise, green and fertile, emerging from the depths. Mountains would ascend from the oceans, forests would spread across the land, and waterfalls would pour down from cliff faces in silver streams. Baldr, slain by mistletoe, would return from Helheim, bringing light back to the world. His brother Hoder would return as well, reconciled in peace. Vidar and Vali, Odin's surviving sons, would gather upon the new earth, and Thor's sons, Modi and Magni, would find their father's hammer, Mjolnir, wielding it to protect the new creation. In a hidden grove, 2 humans would survive, Lif and Lifthrasir. They would shelter themselves during the flames within Hodmimir's wood, drinking the morning dew for sustenance. Emerging into the new dawn, they would repopulate the world, and the cycle of life would begin anew. And so Ragnarok was not merely an end, but also a renewal. It was the breaking and remaking of the world, the burning away of what was old and tired to make space for what was fresh and alive. Even the gods, mighty though they were, could not escape the cycles of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Odin knew this fate, for he had sacrificed an eye for wisdom and hung upon Yggdrasil to learn the runes. He knew that all things, even the gods, are bound to fate, and that no power could avert what was written. Yet he also knew that through Ragnarok, the world would continue, different, but alive. Light would return, and a new sun, brighter than the last, would rise in the sky. Thus, the prophecy of Ragnarok became not only a tale of doom, but a story of hope. It spoke of courage in the face of inevitable death, of honor in standing firm against chaos, and of the promise that even after darkness consumes the world, life will find a way to begin again. The end and rebirth of the world. When the fires of Ragnarok raged across the 9 realms, it seemed as though nothing could survive their fury. Surtur, the fire giant of Muspelheim, strode across the earth with his flaming sword, setting ablaze everything in his path. His flames rose higher than the clouds, consuming forests and mountains, cities and fields. The seas boiled, great waves crashing upon blackened shores as Jormungandr's dying venom poisoned the oceans, and the sky itself burned with colors of deep crimson and blistering gold. The roots of Yggdrasil shivered and groaned beneath the weight of fate. The great world tree, though it did not fall, trembled as the flames licked at its boughs. Creatures that dwelled within its branches, the eagle perched high above, the 4 stags who browsed its tender shoots, the squirrel Ratatoska, who carried messages of insult between eagle and serpent, all felt the scorching heat upon their fur and feathers. Deep below, Nidhogg, the serpent who gnawed at Yggdrasil's roots, writhed in glee at the crumbling of the world. He feasted upon the corpses of the fallen, his long dark coils encircling the souls of the dead, for in this age of chaos, death reigned without end. In Midgard, mountains crumbled into the seas, and the lands were swallowed by the rising waters. All the works of humankind, their halls, temples, fortresses, and settlements, were washed away, leaving nothing but silent waves rolling over the places where once they lived and loved, fought and dreamed. Asgard itself fell. The great halls were shattered by the tremors that rocked the cosmos. Valhalla's golden roof burned away, and the fields where the Einherjar once trained for the final battle were left empty. Bifrost, the rainbow bridge, lay in ruins, its fragments drifting like colored ice in the void. And yet, within this great cataclysm lay the seeds of renewal. For as the raging flames of Surtur's sword consumed the old world, a silence fell. A silence so deep, it was as if even time itself had paused to listen. The roaring of the fires faded into crackling embers. The crashing of waves softened to gentle lapping against new-formed shores. And from beneath the ashes and soot, something began to stir. The earth, drowned beneath the sea, began to rise once more. New lands emerged from the depths, fresh and green, cleansed by the fires and purified by the waters. Mountains of smooth stone lifted their peaks to the sky, untouched by foot or claw. Forests spread swiftly, trees growing tall and strong, their leaves shimmering in the dawn light of a world reborn. Rivers carved their way through fertile valleys, their waters clear and cold, filled with new fish that glimmered beneath rippling surfaces. Meadows bloomed with flowers of every hue, and the scent of blossoms filled the clean air, untainted by smoke or blood. Animals emerged upon this new land. Deer and elk with antlers like branching trees, wolves and foxes with bright eyes and thick fur, birds singing upon the wind as they circled beneath the pale new sun. For the sun itself had been devoured by the wolf skull, and the moon by Hati. But from the ashes of the old sun rose a new one, a daughter born before Ragnarok, hidden away to survive the end. She shone even more brightly than her mother, her light golden and pure, filling the world with warmth and life. In this world reborn, the gods too found renewal. Baldr, the shining god of light and purity, returned from Helheim, his face radiant with peace. With him came his brother Hodder, reconciled and freed from the guilt of Baldr's death. For in this new world there was no more vengeance, only forgiveness. Vidar and Vali, sons of Odin who survived Ragnarok, stood upon the fresh green grass, looking out over the rising lands. Vidar still bore his unbreakable shoe, a symbol of the silent strength that had torn Fenrir's jaws apart. Vali, born for vengeance, now found purpose in renewal. Together they carried their father's wisdom into the reborn realms. Thor's sons, Modi and Magni, also survived. They found Mjolnir lying upon the new earth, untouched by fire or flood. They lifted their father's hammer between them, and its power flowed into their veins, ensuring that the world would remain protected under their guardianship. Far from the ruins of Asgard, hidden deep within a grove called Hodmimir's Wood, two humans had also survived, Leif and Lifthrasir. Throughout the fires and floods, they lay sheltered beneath the great tree's protective branches, drinking the dew of morning to sustain themselves. When the chaos faded, they emerged, blinking in the brilliant dawn light. They beheld the green world stretching before them, a land empty of cities but full of promise. Hand in hand, they walked into the new world, destined to repopulate humanity and begin the cycle of life once more. In this reborn realm, even Yggdrasil itself seemed renewed. Its branches burst forth with tender shoots and new leaves, dew dripping from them like liquid diamonds onto the earth below. The eagle perched atop the tree, spread its wings, shaking off ash and soot, while Ratatoska once more darted up and down its trunk, carrying messages of beginnings rather than insults. The Voluspa speaks of this renewal not as an ending, but as a continuation of the great cycle. The old world dies, but from its death springs life. Fire cleanses, water nourishes, and from silence comes song. The gods who fell in battle remain honored in memory and spirit, while those who survived carry forward their wisdom and power. The new sun rose higher in the sky, illuminating meadows of grass so green they seemed to glow, forests so deep they whispered with secrets, and mountains so high that their peaks were crowned in shining ice. Rivers flowed swiftly to the sea, carrying life through the land, and upon their banks stood Leif and Lifthrasir, watching the ripples pass like time itself. Baldr and Hodder walked among the new gods and the first humans, teaching them the ways of justice, peace, and harmony. Vidar and Vali built halls where honor and wisdom would guide decisions rather than ambition or greed. Modi and Magni wielded Mjolnir to hallow the land and protect it from any lingering shadows. Even Nidhogg, the serpent who gnawed at Yggdrasil's roots, found a place in the new order. Some tales say he survived Ragnarok, flying over the reborn world with corpses in his claws as a reminder of the past. Others say he was slain in the final moments, his death marking the cleansing of evil from the realms. Whichever the truth, his presence ensured that the memory of darkness remained, to teach wisdom to those who walked beneath the sun. The new world stood as a testament to the eternal truth that endings are never final. Creation is born from destruction and life from death. The gods, giants, elves, dwarves, and humans, all were part of this unending cycle, woven together in the threads of fate spun by the Norns at the Well of Erd. Some say that the Norns themselves continued their work, carving runes into the trunk of Yggdrasil to record this new age, their quiet voices speaking of what was, what is, and what shall come again. For though Ragnarok had passed, another would one day follow, and after that another rebirth in an endless dance across time beyond counting. Thus ended the age of gods and giants, and thus began the age of renewal. Baldr's light illuminated the realms once more. Life and Lifthrasir's children spread across the land, building halls beneath the bright sun and whispering stories of what came before. They spoke of Odin, who sacrificed himself for wisdom and faced his fate with courage, of Thor, who battled the serpent to his last breath, of Freya, who gave up his sword for love and fell with honor, of Tyr, who lost his hand to bind Fenrir and his life in final battle, of Heimdall, whose horn still echoes in the winds, and of Loki, whose cunning shaped both creation and destruction, reminding all that chaos and order are but two sides of the same truth. In this way, the story of Norse mythology continued, not as a closed tale, but as a living cycle, unbroken across time. For each ending was merely a doorway to a new beginning, and each beginning carried within it the seeds of its end. The wisdom of Odin, runes, magic, and sacrifice. Odin, Allfather of the Aesir, god of wisdom, war, and poetry, was never content with the knowledge he possessed. Among all beings of the 9 realms, none pursued wisdom with such relentless hunger as he did. For Odin understood that power over others meant nothing if one could not also command understanding of the hidden forces shaping fate itself. From the earliest days of his life, Odin was driven by this desire to know what lay beyond sight. He learned from the giants, who were old as creation, from the Vanir, who held the secrets of fertility and nature's unseen currents, and from his own quiet observations of the world's unspoken patterns. But above all, Odin sought the secrets of magic and runes, for he knew that to understand the fabric of reality, one must learn its hidden language. Among the deepest mysteries were the runes. These were not merely letters or carvings for communication, but symbols of primal forces. Each rune carried its own meaning, power, and spirit. To know them was to shape reality itself, to bind or unbind, to heal or harm, to conceal or reveal. But the runes would not yield their secrets to any creature lightly, not even to the chief of the gods. They lay hidden beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, carved into the bones of the world, known only to the Norns who wove fate beside Urd's well. Odin resolved that he would possess their knowledge, no matter the cost. So he approached Yggdrasil, the great world tree, whose branches stretched into the heavens and roots wound deep into the wells of wisdom and fate. There he took his spear, Gungnir, and drove it into his own side. He hung himself upon the tree, wounded and bleeding, as a sacrifice of himself to himself. For 9 nights and 9 days he hung there, between life and death, neither nourished by food nor drink. The winds howled around him, the tree groaned beneath his weight, and ravens circled high above. In the darkness beneath the branches, Odin peered down into the depths of Ginnungagap, the yawning void from which all things came. He felt his life slipping away, his strength ebbing from his limbs. His mind drifted beyond pain, beyond thought, into a place of utter silence where only the echo of fate remained. There, in that liminal emptiness between worlds, the runes revealed themselves to him. They rose from the shadows like glowing embers, each symbol burning with its own light. Fehu, wealth and cattle. Uruz, primal strength. Thurisaz, the force of giants. Ansuz, divine communication. Raido, journey. Kanaz, fire's illumination. Gibo, gift and exchange. Wunjo, joy. Hagalaz, hailstorm's chaos. Nauthiz, necessity. Isa, ice and stillness. Jera, harvest cycle. Iwaz, yew tree's death and rebirth. Perthro, mystery and fate. Algiz, protection. Sowelo, sun's victory. Taiwaz, justice and sacrifice. Berkano, birch and new beginnings. Ehwaz, horse partnership. Manaz, humanity. Laguz, water's flow. Ingwaz, seed and fertility. Degaz, dawn and transformation. Othala, heritage and home. Each rune burned its meaning into his mind, along with its secrets of use, chants to carve them into wood or bone, charms to invoke their force, rituals to awaken their hidden powers. Odin took them all, branding their wisdom into his soul until he knew the language that underlay all things. And with that knowledge, he understood the price of magic: sacrifice, pain, and surrender to forces beyond oneself. When the 9th night ended, Odin fell from the tree, gasping back life with the runes blazing within him. He emerged from his ordeal changed, eyes darkened with secrets, bearing power unmatched among gods or men. Yet the runes were only one part of Odin's endless quest. To see beyond the veils of time, he sought out Mimir, the wise being who guarded the well beneath Yggdrasil's root in Jotunheim. This was Mimis Brunner, the well of wisdom, whose waters carried knowledge of all ages and all realms. When Odin approached Mimir and asked for a drink, Mimir did not refuse outright, but nor did he grant the request freely. "If you would drink of these waters," Mimir said, "you must pay the price they demand." And so Odin plucked out his own eye and dropped it into the well. Its pale gaze sank beneath the ripples, staring forever upward from the depths. In return, Mimir dipped his horn into the water and gave Odin to drink. As the cold liquid passed his lips, visions flooded his mind. Past, present, and future all revealed themselves. He saw the birth of Ymir, the shaping of Midgard, the rise of the gods, the fated doom of Ragnarok, and the rebirth to follow. He saw each thread of fate woven and cut by the Norns, and he saw that not even he could escape what was written. From that day forth, Odin walked the worlds with only one eye, but that eye saw more than any two could hold. His lost eye remained in Mimir's well, gazing up at Yggdrasil's roots, a silent watcher of wisdom hidden beneath the surface of all things. Odin's mastery of magic was not limited to runes alone. There existed another form of magic, older and wilder than even the runes, Cider. This was the magic of weaving fate, seeing into the hidden currents of possibility and altering them to bring about desired outcomes. It was the magic of dreams, of prophecy, of binding minds and unbinding them, of calling winds and calming storms. Cider was the magic of the Vanir, particularly of Freya, goddess of love, beauty, and fertility. It was said that Freya was the greatest practitioner of Cider in all the 9 realms, and it was she who taught this magic to Odin. Through her, Odin learned to cast his spirit out to travel unseen across worlds. He learned to whisper into the minds of sleepers and to glimpse events far distant in place or time. But Cider was not without its dangers. It was a magic of entanglement, binding the practitioner to forces that could not always be controlled. Among humans, Cider was often practiced by women known as vulvas, seeresses who traveled from settlement to settlement, their staffs adorned with carved symbols, their garments embroidered with protective runes. They sang chants that sent them into trance, where they walked the hidden pathways of fate to see what lay ahead, or to weave protective blessings for those who sought their guidance. For a man to practice Cider was considered shameful among many Norse societies, for it required surrender and submission to forces unseen. Yet Odin cared little for such judgments. He sought knowledge wherever it lay, whether in Mimir's deep well, upon Yggdrasil's dark branches, or within Freya's secret teachings. Armed with runes, Cider, and the wisdom of Mimir's well, Odin became not only a king among gods, but also a wanderer among worlds. He traveled the 9 realms in many guises, wearing a wide-brimmed hat to shadow his missing eye and a cloak to conceal his regal bearing. He appeared as an old man, leaning upon a staff, testing the hospitality and courage of humans, offering counsel or challenge, always watching to see who upheld the values of honor, wisdom, and sacrifice. In poems and sagas, he is called by many names: Ygr, the Terrible, Hrafnagud, the Raven God, Valfoda, Father of the Slain, Bolverk, Worker of Evil, for his cunning deeds, Grimnir, the Masked One, and countless others, each name reflecting a facet of his boundless nature. Runes were used not only by Odin, but by humans who learned fragments of his knowledge. They carved runes upon weapons to grant victory, upon drinking horns to ward off poison, upon ships to protect against storm and sea monsters. They carved them upon grave markers and memorial stones, weaving their prayers, boasts, and remembrances into the language of the world itself. The poets, or skalds, also carried Odin's gifts. Poetry, called Adraria, or the mead of poetry, was itself stolen by Odin from the giants, brewed from Kvasir's blood. He drank this magical mead and bestowed it upon gods and chosen humans, giving them the power to weave words with beauty, meaning, and truth. Thus poetry was not merely art, but magic, a shaping of reality through language, as runes shaped it through symbols. Odin's quests remind us that wisdom always carries a price. Knowledge is not granted freely. It demands sacrifice, of comfort, of certainty, of parts of oneself one may never regain. Odin lost an eye for the vision of fate. He suffered the spear and the tree to gain the runes. He risked shame to learn Cedar, and he drank the blood mead to steal poetic inspiration from the giants. In the end, his wisdom could not save him from Ragnarok, for even gods are bound to fate. But his sacrifices ensured that when the end came, he faced it knowing he had sought every secret the worlds held, leaving nothing unasked, unlearned, or unattempted. And so, Odin remains not only a god of kingship and battle, but the god of seekers. Those who choose the thorned path of knowledge, bearing the wounds that come with insight, and walking into the unknown with one eye turned ever inward, seeing the hidden truths that lie beneath the shifting veils of the world. The Norns and Fate. Far beneath the branches of Yggdrasil, at the base of its vast trunk, where roots twist and burrow deep into the hidden soils of reality, there lies a sacred well known as Urdabrunna, the Well of Urd. Its waters are cold and clear, reflecting not only the pale light of Asgard above, but also truths hidden beyond time. Beside this well dwell the Norns, three powerful beings who weave the destinies of gods, giants, elves, dwarves, and humans alike. Their names are Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, words meaning past, present, and future. These three sisters sit together upon stone seats beneath Yggdrasil's great roots. Each day they draw water from the well in their wooden buckets, mixing it with white clay to pour upon the roots, ensuring that Yggdrasil does not wither or rot. Without their tending, even the world tree would fall, and the 9 realms it holds within its branches would collapse into chaos and void. The Norns are older than the gods themselves. They are not bound to any realm or race, but exist outside the divisions of creation, connected directly to the laws of fate that govern all beings. Their weaving is not a choice, but a function of what is, a recording and shaping of the inevitable threads that emerge from the well of existence. Each being's life is represented as a thread upon their loom. Some threads are long and strong, golden in their brilliance. Others are thin and frayed, fading into darkness before they reach their full length. The Norns weave these threads together into vast tapestries that depict the unfolding of every event, large or small, across the 9 realms. Urd weaves the past, the deeds done, the words spoken, the thoughts felt and forgotten. She holds all memory and ensures nothing that has occurred is ever truly lost. Verdandi weaves the present, each moment unfolding into the next, fluid and fleeting, like the ripples of water disturbed by a falling leaf. Skuld weaves the future, the things to come, the choices not yet made, and the endings of all beginnings. Yet Skuld's weaving is not always fixed, for though fate is strong, there remain paths within her cloth that shift like wind-blown grasses. The Norns do not speak often. They sit in silence, their hands moving ceaselessly, their eyes cast down upon the loom or gazing far into places unseen. When they do speak, their voices are like the echo of wind upon stone, or the hush of falling snow upon a silent field. Their words are riddles of truth that no mind can fully grasp, for to understand fate is to know the pain of inevitability and the sorrow of transience. Sometimes the gods themselves approach the Norns to seek knowledge of their fate. Odin often stands before them, his one remaining eye solemn as he watches their weaving. He knows that his own thread is there, golden and proud, but ending in darkness at the jaws of Fenrir. Thor's thread is thick as braided rope, pulsing with the red light of battle, ending in Jormungandr's venom. Baldr's thread was once pure and shining like moonlit snow, but it was cut short by mistletoe's shadow. Even Loki's thread is woven among theirs, shimmering with shifting colors, bright one moment, dark the next, ending in flame and ruin. But the Norns do not alter their weaving, even at the gods' requests. Their task is not to change fate, but to maintain its order. Their weaving ensures that all beings, great or small, play their part in the cosmic design. They alone understand that endings are not failures, and that destruction is not the opposite of creation, but its partner in an unending dance. Many humans feared the Norns, for they saw them only as bringers of death and doom. Yet in truth, the Norns were not cruel nor compassionate. They were beyond such notions. They were simply the keepers of what must be, maintaining the balance that allows the worlds to exist at all. In the halls of kings and warriors, it was said that each person has their own personal Norn, a lesser fate weaver who attends only to their life's thread. These lesser Norns might weave joy or sorrow, health or sickness, wealth or poverty. Some were kind, weaving lives of peace and honor. Others were harsh, weaving lives of loss and hardship. But even these personal Norns answered to the three great sisters beneath Yggdrasil. When a child was born, the Norns would visit, laying their hands upon the newborn's forehead, whispering the shape of its life into its spirit. Some would live long and die peacefully surrounded by kin. Others would burn brightly and fall quickly, slain upon a battlefield or lost at sea. And there were those whose fates remained clouded even to the Norns, their threads flickering between possibilities until the final moment arrived. The Well of Erd itself was a place of great power. Its waters nourished Yggdrasil's roots, and from its depths rose the wisdom of all that has been. The gods did not drink from it lightly, for its knowledge carried the weight of sorrow. To see the past in perfect clarity is to see also every regret, every grief, every mistake that cannot be undone. Above the Norns, upon Yggdrasil's branches, perched an eagle with eyes that missed nothing. Between its eyes sat a hawk, peering even deeper into the world below. And beneath the tree's roots coiled Nidhogg, gnawing ever at the wood, seeking to bring decay and ruin. Between eagle and serpent, Ratatoska, the squirrel, scurried, carrying words that twisted into taunts. For such was the nature of gossip, and the hidden spite it often bore. These creatures, too, were part of the tapestry woven by the Norns, each fulfilling its purpose, no matter how small or great. For the Norns wove not only the lives of beings, but also the turning of seasons, the rising and falling of empires, the birth and death of stars, and the cycles of creation and destruction that pulse through every realm. Sometimes mortals would leave offerings at sacred groves or wells believed to be connected to the Norns. Silver coins, carved wooden figures, woven cloth, and prayers whispered upon the wind were left in the hope of gaining their favor or softening a harsh fate. Yet the Norns were unmoved by offerings. Their weaving could not be bribed nor altered, though humans found comfort in these small acts of devotion. The Norns remain as silent witnesses to all that is and all that shall be. They are older than the gods, deeper than the oceans, colder than the longest winter. Their loom turns without end, shaping the threads of fate with fingers pale as moonlight. Even when Ragnarok comes, and Surtur's flames consume the 9 realms, the Norns will continue their weaving beyond the end. For fate does not cease with death, and the cycles of time continue in forms unseen. When the new world rises from the sea, green and fair, and Baldr returns to walk upon its grass, the Norns will sit once more beside the Well of Erd, weaving the fates of new gods and new humans, silent and eternal, keepers of the balance that allows all life to exist. Their weaving reminds us that everything has its time, joy and sorrow, life and death, gain and loss. To accept fate is not to surrender to despair, but to stand with courage before the unchangeable, living each day fully within the thread that is yours to weave with your own deeds and choices. And so, in the quiet shadows beneath Yggdrasil, the Norns continue their work, unseen yet ever present, weaving the fabric of the cosmos in silence, as the waters of Urdabrunner ripple beneath their feet, and the world tree sighs with the slow breath of eternity. The Valkyries and Valhalla. In the golden halls of Asgard, where the gods feasted and planned the fates of worlds, there existed a realm within a realm, a place reserved for those who died not in sickness or old age, but with weapons in hand, fighting with courage until their final breath. This place was Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, a domain ruled by Odin himself, standing as both a reward for the brave and a preparation ground for the doom that was to come. Valhalla was said to be a vast and magnificent hall with 540 doors, each wide enough that 800 warriors could march out side by side. Its roof was made of golden shields, overlapping like scales upon the back of a great serpent. Spears formed its rafters, and its benches were lined with mail coats. The wolf guarded its western doors, and an eagle hovered above, its eyes piercing the farthest corners of the 9 realms. Here dwelled the Einherjar, the chosen slain. These were warriors who fell upon the field of battle with honor, chosen not merely for their skill in arms, but for their courage in the face of death. Their bodies were carried from the place of their dying by beings both feared and revered, the Valkyries. The Valkyries were shield maidens of Odin, fierce and beautiful, riding upon swift horses that galloped through sky and storm. Their name means choosers of the slain, for it was their task to decide who would die in battle and who would live to fight another day. But they were not bringers of death alone. They were also guides of the dead, carrying fallen warriors to their place among the honored in Valhalla. They wore armor that gleamed like moonlit ice, their helms adorned with wings or intricate knotwork, and their shields bore runes of protection and power. In some stories, they are said to have worn cloaks of swan feathers, which allowed them to fly between realms unseen. When they descended upon a battlefield, their presence was felt as a cold wind upon the neck, a sudden stillness before the clash of swords, a shimmering in the corner of the eye that vanished when turned upon directly. The names of the Valkyrie carried meanings that spoke of battle's fury and fate's finality. Brynhild, armor battle; Hilda, battle; Skogul, shaker; Gunnar, war; Geirskogul, spear shaker; Randgrid, shield destroyer; Rota, the stormy one; Mist, cloud or mist; Skuld, who was also counted among the Norns, meaning that which is to come. Though fierce, they were not without compassion, for they saw the hearts of warriors, their fears, hopes, and final thoughts as life slipped away. They became the last sight of many who lay bleeding upon earth, soaked with iron and grief. To see a Valkyrie riding above the clash was to know one's fate had been chosen. When a warrior fell, a Valkyrie would lift his spirit from his broken body and place him upon her horse. Together they would ride across the cold skies, through darkening clouds and whispering winds, past the towering peaks of Jotunheim and the shimmering bridge of Bifrost, until at last they reached the gates of Valhalla. Here, the warrior would dismount and be welcomed by the gods. His wounds would vanish, and his strength would return tenfold. He would take his place among the Einherjar to feast and train for the final battle at Ragnarok. Each day in Valhalla began with the rising of the sun over golden fields, where the Einherjar donned their armor and took up their weapons. They fought one another with fierce joy, testing strength and skill, swords clashing upon shields, spears striking with thunderous force. Though many fell each day, none remained dead, for at dusk their wounds healed, and they rose again to walk back to Odin's hall. There they gathered upon the benches of Valhalla, ale horns brimming with mead that never ran dry. They feasted upon the meat of Sihrimnir, the great beast slain each evening and reborn each dawn, its flesh rich and satisfying, filling every belly without ever diminishing. The mead they drank flowed from the udders of Hydron, a goat who grazed upon the leaves of Yggdrasil's highest branches. From her teats flowed rivers of golden mead into vast vats, enough to sate every warrior in Odin's hall. Amid their feasting, the Valkyries walked, pouring mead into drinking horns, their presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. They moved with grace beyond mortal women, their eyes carrying the calm of death and the promise of glory. Some say that love bloomed between Valkyries and warriors, secret vows whispered beneath the clash of shields, though such love was bound by the laws of Asgard, and many such tales ended in sorrow when duty called the Valkyrie away. In some sagas, Valkyrie took mortal lovers, leaving behind their swan cloaks to walk upon Midgard. If their cloaks were hidden, they could not return to their realm, living as human women until their cloaks were found again. Brynhild was one such Valkyrie, punished by Odin to sleep within a ring of fire until awakened by a hero worthy of her love. Valhalla itself was not the only afterlife in Norse belief. Half of those slain in battle were taken by the Valkyries to Odin's hall, while the other half were claimed by Freyja, who ruled over Folkvangr, her own field of the slain, where they dwelled in peace and beauty under her gentle guidance. The existence of Valhalla was not merely a reward, but a preparation. For Ragnarok would come, and Odin needed an army to fight beside the gods in that final battle. The Einherjar trained each day not only for sport, but for their destined role in the war that would end all things. To the people of Midgard, Valhalla was a beacon of courage. To die in battle with honor was to ensure a place among the gods, to drink mead beside heroes, to rise each day renewed. Their poets and skalds sang of Valhalla's golden halls, of Valkyries descending upon battlefields, of warriors reborn without fear. These songs inspired kings and raiders, farmers and jarls, to stand bravely before death, believing that their spirits would ride behind the Valkyries into everlasting honor. In the quiet of long winter nights, warriors sitting by their hearths would imagine the sound of hoofbeats upon the wind, the faint shimmer of feathers beneath the moon, and wonder whether their fates had been woven into the Valkyries' choosing. Mothers whispered blessings upon their sons before battle, asking that if they must fall, they would fall bravely, so that the Valkyries would carry them to Valhalla's golden gates. In this way, the Valkyries were more than servants of Odin. They were symbols of courage, destiny, and the thin veil between life and death. They reminded all who lived that their deeds in life shaped their place in eternity, and that beyond fear stood a hall filled with eternal light, laughter, and the clash of friendly blades. And so the Valkyries ride still in the stories told by skalds, their horses' hooves flashing upon midnight clouds, their cloaks trailing light across the dark sky. They remain the silent choosers of the slain, the beautiful bearers of fate, forever guiding the brave to Valhalla, where they take their place among the honored, awaiting the day when the horn of Gjallarhorn will sound, and they will ride forth once more to fight beside the gods in the twilight of the world. Norse Cosmology and Time. In the world view of the Norse people, the universe was not an endless, empty expanse, nor a random scattering of stars and planets across a silent void. Instead, their cosmology was a grand, living structure, ordered yet chaotic, stable yet ever-changing, cyclical rather than linear, where every being, realm, and event was bound together in a tapestry woven by ancient forces beyond comprehension. At the center of this cosmos stood Yggdrasil, the world tree. Its vast trunk rose from the wells of wisdom and fate, its branches spread across the heavens, and its roots delved into the darkest depths. This tree was not merely a tree, but the axis of existence, connecting all 9 realms, holding them in place within the void of Ginnungagap, the yawning abyss from which creation was born. The 9 realms were arranged not as separate planets, but as distinct worlds inhabiting the same grand cosmic structure. Each realm had its own nature, its own inhabitants, and its own place upon Yggdrasil's branches or among its roots. At the highest lay Asgard, realm of the Aesir gods, shining with golden halls and guarded by Heimdall upon the Bifrost Bridge, whose rainbow colors arched between realms like a path of shimmering light. Here the gods dwelled in splendor, ruling over the other worlds, weaving fate, and preparing for the final battles to come. Below Asgard lay Vanaheim, the realm of the Vanir gods. These deities were associated with fertility, prosperity, and the secret magics of the earth. Though once at war with the Aesir, they became allies through treaties and exchanges of hostages, bringing balance to the divine order. Midgard, the realm of humans, lay in the middle, encircled by the Great Sea and protected from the giants of Jotunheim by a wall built from Ymir's eyebrows. Midgard was connected to Asgard by Bifrost, allowing gods to walk among humans when they wished, though such visits were rare and often bore great consequence. Jotunheim, the land of the giants, lay beyond Midgard's seas, a realm of deep forests, towering mountains, and endless wilderness. Here dwelled the Jotnar, the frost and stone giants, beings of primal chaos and natural force, many of whom despised the gods, yet also shared kinship with them, for the gods themselves descended from giant bloodlines. Alfheim, realm of the Light Elves, was a place of ethereal beauty. Its meadows and forests glowed with their own inner radiance. Its rivers ran with silver light, and its people were beings of purity and inspiration. They were allied with the gods, though they lived apart, hidden from mortal eyes. Svartalfheim, or Nidavellir, was the realm of the dwarves, who preferred the darkness beneath the mountains, crafting weapons, treasures, and tools of immense power in their forges, their halls echoing with hammer strikes and flickering with forge light. Niflheim lay deep in the roots of Yggdrasil, a realm of mist, ice, and ancient cold. Here lay the frozen rivers and endless fogs from which Ymir the giant was born in the beginning. Within Niflheim was Helheim, the kingdom of Hel, daughter of Loki, who ruled over those who died of sickness or old age. Her halls were cold and silent, her people pale shadows of their living selves. Muspelheim, realm of fire, was the polar opposite of Niflheim. It burned with unending flame, home to Surtur and his fire giants, whose heat and light played a role in both creation and destruction. It was from Muspelheim's sparks that the first stars were born, and it would be Surtur's flames that would end the world at Ragnarok. Finally, Helheim itself was often counted as a separate realm despite being part of Niflheim, for its purpose and ruler were distinct. It was not a place of punishment like later concepts of hell, but a shadowy afterlife for those who died without glory. The 9 realms were bound together not only by Yggdrasil's branches and roots, but by invisible pathways of magic, fate, and cosmic law. Time flowed through them in ways that differed from human understanding. For the Norse, time was not a single unbroken line from past to future, but a cycle, an unending turning of ages, each repeating the patterns of the last, though never in exactly the same way. Their myths speak of ages that came before our own, of worlds that rose and fell before the current cycle. Each time the world ended in fire, flood, or frost, it would rise again, reborn and renewed, carrying forward echoes of what came before. but always different in form and fate. This cyclical understanding of time shaped how the Norse viewed life, death, and destiny. They did not believe they could escape fate, for each thread was woven by the Norns long before it was lived. But they believed in living with courage within that fate, for honor and deeds were what gave meaning to a life bound by inevitability. In daily life, this cosmology shaped rituals, choices, and identity. A warrior rode into battle, knowing that if death was fated, it would come whether he fought or fled. Better than to die bravely and meet the Valkyries upon the field. Farmers tilled their land, knowing the cycles of seasons reflected the deeper cycles of the cosmos: growth, decay, death, and rebirth. Even the gods themselves lived within this cyclical time. Odin, knowing Ragnarok was inevitable, still gathered the Einherjar and sought wisdom wherever he could find it. Thor, knowing he would slay Jormungandr but die from its venom, still lifted his hammer against chaos. Baldr's death and promised return spoke of this eternal renewal, light falling into darkness, only to rise again. Yggdrasil itself embodies this time beyond time. Each day it is gnawed by Nidhogg's teeth, its branches shaken by storms, and yet each day the Norns pour waters and clay upon its roots, renewing it with life. It carries within its wood the memory of all that has been, and the promise of all that will come again. For the Norse, this cosmology was not abstract theology, but lived reality. The aurora borealis that danced across their northern skies was the Bifrost Bridge glowing at night. Thunder was Thor's chariot rolling across the heavens. Sudden gusts of wind in still forests were the passing of elves or spirits unseen. Their world was alive with meaning, woven into the greater tapestry of gods and realms. In their poetry, time was described as an ever-turning wheel, a serpent eating its own tail, a river that circles back upon itself while always flowing forward. This is why their myths do not end with Ragnarok in despair, but with the rebirth of the world. Even as Surtur's flames consume the 9 realms, a new sun rises, new land emerges from the sea, and Baldr returns to lead the gods into a new age. Through this understanding of time and cosmology, the Norse found meaning in hardship, courage in death, and hope in every ending. For though the world would burn, it would also bloom anew, and the stories would continue, told by new voices beneath new stars. And so their cosmology remains as timeless as the myths themselves, a vision of a world bound together by Yggdrasil's roots and branches, by unseen threads of magic and fate, turning endlessly through cycles of creation, destruction, and rebirth, forever and beyond. Legendary heroes, Sigurd and the Volsungs. Beyond the tales of gods and giants, beyond the thunder of Thor and the wisdom of Odin, there exists within Norse mythology the stories of mortal heroes, men and women, whose deeds echoed with a greatness that rivaled the gods themselves. Among these legends, none stood taller in the hearts of the North than Sigurd, Dragonslayer, and heir of the Volsung line. The saga of Sigurd begins long before his birth, in the days of his great-grandfather, Volsung. Volsung was a mighty king, born from a tree itself. His mother, Raria's wife, struggled to bear a child, so the gods intervened. Frigg sent an apple of fertility, and after 6 years of pregnancy, Volsung was born, bursting forth from his mother's side, already large and strong. His hall was built around a great oak tree called Barnstokker, its branches rising through the roof, its roots deep within the earth. Volsung had 10 sons and a daughter named Signy. Among his sons was Sigmund, a warrior of great renown. At Signy's wedding feast, as the guests sat beneath the mighty oak, an old man entered the hall. He wore a hooded cloak, and one of his eyes shone with piercing power. This was Odin in disguise. He strode to the tree, drew a sword from beneath his cloak, and drove it deep into the trunk until its hilt gleamed against the wood. Then he turned to the guests and said that whoever could pull forth this sword would find it theirs to keep. Each man rose in turn, straining and grunting to free the blade, but none succeeded until Sigmund stepped forward. With a single, effortless pull, he drew the sword from the tree. Many coveted it, including King Sigurd, Signy's new husband, who offered gold beyond measure for it. But Sigmund refused, for the sword had been gifted by Odin himself. Sigurd grew bitter with rage and soon plotted revenge. He invited Volsung and his sons to visit him, but when they arrived, Sigurd betrayed them. He slew Volsung and ordered Sigmund and his brothers to be tied to trees in the forest to be devoured by wolves. Each night a wolf came and tore one brother apart, until only Sigmund remained. Sini, still loyal to her kin despite her marriage, sent a servant each night with honey to smear upon Sigmund's face. When the she-wolf came to devour him, she licked the honey and licked his face, and Sigmund bit down upon her tongue with such force that she tore herself apart in panic, and he was freed. Signy, knowing that only a son born of her own blood could avenge her father, disguised herself and lay with Sigmund. From their union was born Sinfiotli, fierce and strong. When he came of age, Signy revealed the truth and asked Sigmund to take revenge. Together, father and son slew Sigurd, burning his hall with him inside. When Signy saw her vengeance fulfilled, she stepped into the flames, choosing death alongside the husband she hated. Sigmund returned to his lands and became king, and in his old age took a wife named Yggdrasil. During battle against King Lingvi, Odin appeared on the battlefield in disguise, as he often did, testing heroes' fates. Odin struck Sigmund's sword with his spear, shattering it in his hands. Fatally wounded, Sigmund spoke to Yggdrasil before he died, telling her to gather the pieces of his sword, for one day their unborn son would reforge it and wield it to glory. Yggdrasil fled, and in time gave birth to Sigurd, the last of the Volsungs. He was raised by the wise smith Regan, who taught him all the arts of rune carving, speech, swordplay, and law. Regan, however, had his own desires. He was the brother of Fafnir, a dwarf who had slain their father, Hreidmar, to claim Andvari's cursed gold, and transformed himself into a dragon to guard it. Regan longed for the treasure, and sought to use Sigurd to slay Fafnir. Sigurd asked Regan for a sword worthy of such a feat. Twice Regan forged blades, but each shattered against Sigurd's testing strike. Then Sigurd remembered the pieces of his father's sword. He bade Regan reforge them, and from the shards was born Gram, a sword of such sharpness that it could cleave an anvil in two. With Gram in hand, Sigurd set forth to slay Fafnir. He dug a pit upon the dragon's path, hiding within it until Fafnir slithered overhead. As the dragon's massive body passed above, Sigurd thrust Gram upward, piercing its belly and driving the blade deep into its heart. Fafnir reared in agony, his dying breath filling the air with poison and steam. As he lay dying, he warned Sigurd of the curse upon the gold, that whoever possessed it would find only ruin. Regan approached as Fafnir died and bade Sigurd roast the dragon's heart for him to eat. As Sigurd cooked it, he touched the heart to see if it was done, and the hot juices burned his thumb. He placed it in his mouth to cool the burn, and at that moment he understood the speech of birds. Overhead, sparrows whispered of Regan's treachery, for he planned to slay Sigurd once he claimed the gold. Without hesitation, Sigurd turned upon Regan and slew him. Then he gathered Andvari's hoard, packing it upon his horse, Grani, a descendant of Odin's steed Sleipnir. Sigurd's fame spread far and wide, but his destiny was not yet fulfilled. He rode until he came upon a mountain encircled by fire. Within lay a woman in armor, sleeping upon a bier. This was Brynhild, a Valkyrie, punished by Odin for disobedience to sleep until a man worthy of her woke her. Sigurd passed unharmed through the flames, for his courage was pure. He woke Brynhild, and they spoke long together of love and honor. Sigurd pledged himself to her and gave her a ring from Andvari's hoard, not knowing it carried the curse. Yet fate's threads tangled around them. Sigurd journeyed to the court of King Giuki, where Queen Grimhild gave him a potion to forget Brynhild, and he married Gudrun, Giuki's daughter. Meanwhile, Brynhild was promised to Gunnar, Sigurd's sworn brother, but she vowed to marry only the man who could ride through her wall of fire. Gunnar tried and failed, so Sigurd, taking Gunnar's shape through magic, rode through the flames again and won Brynhild for Gunnar. But when Brynhild learned the truth, betrayal burned in her heart. Her love turned to fury, and she urged Gunnar and his brother Hogni to slay Sigurd. They stabbed him as he lay sleeping beside Gudrun. As Sigurd died, he looked upon his wife and spoke of their love, and Gudrun wept tears of such sorrow that none could comfort her. Brynhild, stricken with grief and guilt, took her own life and was laid upon a pyre beside Sigurd, so that they might journey together to the afterlife. Their deaths unleashed the curse of Andvari's gold upon the house of Giuki, leading to further tragedies that rippled through generations, echoing even into the Germanic Nibelungenlied centuries later. The saga of Sigurd and the Volsungs is not merely a tale of heroism and dragons. It is a story of fate's inescapable pull, of love twisted by deceit, of curses carried across lifetimes. It reminds us that even the greatest heroes cannot stand against the weight of destiny, woven by forces older than gods themselves. Yet Sigurd's name lived on beyond his death, sung by skalds beside hearth fires, remembered by warriors who sought to mirror his courage, and honored by kings who claimed descent from his bloodline. For in slaying the dragon, winning Brynhild's love, and dying with honor despite betrayal, Sigurd fulfilled the highest ideals of the Norse hero: courage, strength, loyalty, and the acceptance of fate without fear. Rituals, worship, and daily life. For the Norse people, the gods were not distant, abstract forces beyond reach, but ever-present beings woven into the fabric of daily life. Their myths shaped the way people saw the world, and their rituals brought meaning to each season: harvest, birth, and death. To live in the north was to live under the gaze of gods, ancestors, spirits, and unseen beings who shared the land, the sea, and the sky. Worship among the Norse was not confined to grand temples of stone and gold as in southern lands. Their places of devotion were woven into nature itself: sacred groves where ancient oaks rose towards the sky, forest clearings bathed in moonlight, rocky hills where the winds whispered, springs whose waters never froze even in the deepest winter. These were called hurga, outdoor altars of piled stones upon which offerings were laid, or hof, wooden temples built with carved pillars, roof beams adorned with dragon heads, and walls echoing with prayers and feasts. One of the most common forms of worship was the blot, a sacrifice or offering made to honor the gods, ask for protection, or give thanks for harvests and victories. A blot could be as simple as pouring out a libation of mead onto the earth, or as grand as sacrificing livestock to the gods. Their blood collected in bowls and sprinkled upon altars, statues, and the gathered people with bundles of evergreen twigs called hlautteina. This blood was believed to carry sacred power, blessing those it touched with the favor of the gods. At the great seasonal festivals, entire communities gathered for these rites. During Jol, the midwinter festival, families feasted for days, honoring Odin as the bringer of inspiration and wisdom, and Freya as the god who would ensure the sun's return and the fertility of the land in spring. Fires were lit to drive away darkness, and carved wooden sun wheels were burned or rolled down hillsides, symbolizing the turning of seasons. In spring, the Disablo was held to honor the Disir, female ancestral spirits who protected families and clans. These rites were often led by women, with offerings of food, drink, and woven cloth laid upon stone altars beneath the budding trees. The Disir were believed to guide childbirth, bless the home, and protect warriors in battle. Another festival was Vetaneta, Winter Nights, held at the end of harvest before winter's arrival. Offerings were made to the Vanir gods, particularly Freya and Njord, for good weather and bountiful harvests in the year to come. Animals were sacrificed, and their meat shared in feasts that lasted through the long autumn nights. Rituals were not only communal, but deeply personal. Farmers carved runes into their plows to ensure fertile soil. Fishermen carved Thor's hammer upon their boats to protect them from storms and sea monsters. Women carved protective runes into loom weights to bless the cloth they wove with health and harmony. Children wore small hammer amulets around their necks to invoke Thor's strength and Odin's wisdom. Seers known as Völar traveled from village to village, carrying staffs carved with symbols of power, their cloaks adorned with stones, beads, and bones. When they arrived, a high seat was prepared, and the community gathered to hear their visions. The Volva entered trance through chants and songs, seeing beyond the veil of the present to glimpse fate's hidden paths. They advised on matters of war, harvest, illness, and the future of families and clans. Their words carried weight, for they were believed to speak with voices drawn from Yggdrasil's roots. Magic rituals such as Seder were practiced to influence fate, call winds for sailors, heal the sick, or bring harm to enemies. These rites often took place at night, beneath open skies, with chants rising into the dark and fires flickering upon hidden hills. Practitioners of Seder were mostly women, though Odin himself practiced it, learning its arts from Freya. It was a magic of weaving and unweaving the strands of destiny, dangerous for the unskilled, for it required surrender to forces beyond human understanding. Death rituals held equal importance in Norse life. When a person died, their body was washed and dressed in their finest clothes, with grave goods laid beside them, weapons for warriors, tools for farmers, jewelry and keys for women, food, drink, and sometimes sacrificed animals or slaves to accompany them into the afterlife. Some were buried in mounds beneath stone circles or ship-shaped arrangements. Others cremated upon pyres, their ashes gathered into urns buried beneath cairns. Great chieftains and jarls were laid to rest in ships, buried upon land or set alight upon the sea, their sails catching the final winds as flames consumed wood and flesh alike. This was believed to carry them swiftly to the halls of their ancestors, or to Valhalla if they had died in battle. These ship burials remain among the most awe-inspiring archaeological finds of the Viking world. Their iron rivets, weapon hoards, carved prows, and sacrificed horses testifying to the wealth, power, and beliefs of their people. Daily life was filled with small acts of devotion. Before journeys, people raised drinking horns to Thor for protection or Odin for cunning in trade and travel. Before hunting, they called upon Ulla for keen aim. Farmers blessed their fields with ale, poured in the furrows as the plough turned the earth. Women carved runes for love or childbirth upon small wooden staves tied with red thread. Children learned stories of the gods not only as entertainment, but as teachings of bravery, loyalty, cunning, and honor. In the evenings, families gathered around hearth fires, sharing tales of Odin's wanderings, Thor's battles with giants, Freya's tears of red gold, and Loki's cunning mischief. These stories were their histories, their moral codes, their understanding of the world's mysteries woven into words that glowed like embers in the minds of listeners. Though Christianity would come to the north and sweep away the old ways, echoes of these rituals remain. The evergreen tree, brought indoors at Jol, became the Christmas tree. The carving of runes for protection found its way into folk charms and prayers. The long feasts in midwinter, the honoring of ancestors, the lighting of fires to drive away darkness, all carried forward threads of the ancient practices that once tied Norse people to their gods, their land, and their place within the great cycles of time. In their rituals, the Norse found not only blessing, but belonging. Every offering, every carved rune, every whispered prayer reminded them that they were part of a vast living world, where gods walked among humans, spirits dwelled in stones and streams, and each life was a bright bead upon the endless thread woven by unseen hands beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. Creatures and spirits of Norse mythology. beyond the gods and giants, beyond the halls of Asgard and the feasting grounds of Valhalla, the Norse cosmos teemed with beings unseen, spirits who walked the forests, dwelled beneath hills, whispered through streams, or stirred uneasily in burial mounds. These creatures and spirits shaped daily life as deeply as the gods themselves, inhabiting the quiet edges of awareness where myth met the living world. Among the most feared were the Draugr, the restless dead. Unlike spirits that departed peacefully to Helheim or Valhalla, Draugr were corpses risen from burial mounds, animated by greed, vengeance, or unfinished duty. They guarded treasures buried with them, their bodies swollen and darkened, reeking of decay, their eyes glowing with cold malevolence. They possessed superhuman strength, able to crush men in their iron grip, and some could increase their size at will, towering over terrified warriors in moonlit graveyards. The Draugr's touch brought sickness and death, and their minds retained jealous memories of life, desiring only to keep what was theirs. Farmers feared burial mounds disturbed at night, and warriors carried protective charms when crossing old battlefields where restless souls might linger. In sagas, heroes defeated Draugr by beheading them, burning their bodies and scattering their ashes to the sea, ensuring no corpse would rise again. In the forests and beneath the green hills dwelled the Huldufolk, the hidden people. These beings resembled humans but were finer in feature, paler of skin, and lived in an invisible world that intertwined with Midgard. They tended their livestock upon hidden meadows, their music drifting softly upon the evening air, heard only by those attuned to such quiet magic. The Huldufolk were neither wholly good nor evil. When respected, they brought luck and health to the land, ensuring crops grew tall and animals birthed strong offspring. Farmers left bowls of milk or pieces of fresh bread upon stone cairns to honor them. But those who cut down their trees or built upon their dwellings without permission risked misfortune, broken tools, spoiled milk, sickness, or madness. Even today in northern lands, roads are sometimes rerouted to avoid stones or hills said to house the hidden folk. Beneath the earth lived the Dvergar, or dwarves, though their stories have largely been told already in earlier chapters. Here, we instead turn to the spirits of land and nature, known as Landvetir, the land wights. These spirits inhabited every field, mountain, coastline, and grove. Each region of Midgard had its own Landvetir, and it was considered essential to honor them to ensure prosperity and peace. When Viking ships approached shore, carved dragon heads upon the prows were often removed to avoid frightening the Landvetir, for angering them risked storms or failure of harvest. Iceland's coat of arms itself bears 4 Landvetir: the bull of the southwest, the giant of the northeast, the eagle of the northwest, and the dragon of the southeast, guardians of the land since settlement. The Aesir were female spirits associated with fate, ancestry, and protection. Some believed them to be minor goddesses. Others saw them as ancestral mothers who watched over their descendants. At the Dísablót, women led rituals to honor them, seeking blessings for childbirth, weaving, and the health of kin. They appeared in dreams, veiled and silent, or in times of danger, standing unseen beside warriors in battle, turning spear tips aside with invisible hands. In frozen lakes and lonely tarns dwelled spirits known as Neka or Nuka, water horses whose beauty concealed danger. They appeared as sleek grey or white horses grazing at the water's edge. If a child climbed upon their back, the Naisha's skin would become sticky as tar, binding the rider fast before plunging into the depths, drowning and devouring their captive. Yet some Nika, when caught and bridled with runic spells, could be forced to work, pulling great stones for building halls, or turning mill wheels until freed. The sea itself teemed with hidden beings. Marmenil, mermen, were said to rise from the waves during storms, their hair green with seaweed, singing songs that drew sailors from their course. The Hafgufa, a creature so vast it was mistaken for an island, lay sleeping upon the ocean floor, its mouth open to swallow entire schools of fish and unwary ships alike. Trolls roamed the deep forests and high mountains, beings of immense size and strength but slow-witted, their lives ruled by hunger and ancient grudges. By daylight they turned to stone, and many craggy peaks were said to be trolls caught by the sun's rising. Yet some trolls wielded dangerous magic, spinning curses upon those who offended them, or stealing cattle and children in the dark of winter. In the liminal hours of dawn and dusk, Vardöga, spirit doubles, sometimes appeared. These were like echoes of a person's presence arriving before them, footsteps heard approaching long before their arrival, a shadow glimpsed passing through a door moments before they entered. Vardöga were not malevolent but uncanny, reminders of the unseen currents of time and spirit flowing alongside the waking world. The Lichtgubbe, or Lantern Man, wandered bogs and marshes, appearing as flickering lights upon the mist. Those who followed the light, believing it a fellow traveller, would soon find themselves lost in sinking peat, the cold waters closing over their heads as the lantern vanished into the gloom. In every aspect of life, the Norse felt surrounded by spirits and creatures. From the dragon coiled beneath Yggdrasil's roots to the wight in the corner of a sheepfold, from the Drauga who guarded barrows to the Nyka rippling silent waters. The world was alive with presence. These beings were neither good nor evil in the moral sense, but operated by their own laws of nature and ancient magic. To live wisely was to live with respect for these spirits, to leave offerings at sacred stones, to speak words of thanks when taking wood from the forest or fish from the stream, to honor burial mounds, and to walk with quiet humility beneath the northern lights that flickered like spirits dancing in the sky. Even today, these creatures live on in stories told by grandparents to children on winter nights, in place names marking hidden folk dwellings, in stone cairns left untouched by roads, and in the silent awe felt when standing alone in deep forests or upon wind-swept cliffs, where the old magic still lingers just beyond sight. The Lay of Rig, Origins of Humanity. In the deep past, before the deeds of Thor and Loki, before the building of Asgard's golden halls, and before the first Viking ship ever cut across cold grey seas, there came a wanderer walking the long roads of Midgard. His name was Rig, though in truth he was Heimdall, guardian of Bifrost, come to walk among humankind and shape their destinies at the dawn of their world. The tales say that Rig travelled alone along the seashore, across windswept dunes and tide-slicked stones, the gulls crying above him as the waves whispered secrets of creation and fate. His eyes shone with knowledge beyond mortal grasp, and his bearing was noble, though he wore the rough cloak and hood of a wanderer. At last, as dusk settled over the world and small hearth fires flickered in distant homes, Rig came upon a humble dwelling of turf and stone. Smoke drifted from its roof hole, and the scent of simple food reached his keen senses. He knocked upon the low wooden door and was welcomed in by Ai and Edda, great-grandfather and great-grandmother. Their hall was dark, lit only by a small fire upon the packed earth floor. Ai's beard was grey as frost upon bare branches, and Edda's hair was thin and white as spun flax. Their clothes were coarse woven, their bed a straw-stuffed sack upon a frame of driftwood poles. Yet they welcomed Rig with warm smiles and bade him sit between them upon the bench. They shared their meagre meal of broth thickened with roots and crusts of coarse-baked bread, their gnarled hands offering him food without hesitation. That night, Rig lay between Ai and Edda upon their straw bed, and there he blessed them with his power. He stayed 3 nights beneath their roof, and when he departed at dawn upon the 4th day, he left behind his seed in Edda's womb. In time, Edda bore a son whom they named Thrall. He grew quickly, strong in back and broad in hands. His skin was darkened by the sun, his palms thick and rough with calluses. His hair was shaggy, his features coarse, his arms knotted with sinew from labor. He learned to bind bundles of firewood, shape ropes, build fences, and drive oxen in the field. His clothes were made of rough hide, his feet bare and hardened. Thrall married a woman named Thor, who was equally strong and weathered, her arms scarred from harvest knives, her nails split from scrubbing and grinding grain. Together they had many children, sons and daughters with broad shoulders and thick fingers, dark hair and sturdy frames. From them descended the thralls, the bondservants, who worked the fields, tended the livestock, split wood, wove rough cloth, and built the halls of others. Rig continued his journey, walking onward along marshes where reeds whispered in dawn winds until he came to another home. This dwelling was taller, with smoke curling in calm spirals from a stone chimney and shuttered windows glowing warmly in the evening. Here lived Afi and Amma, grandfather and grandmother. They welcomed him in with courtesy and sat him upon a polished bench covered with woven blankets. Their meal was richer than and Edda's. Fresh bread baked upon iron plates, cured meats hung from beams overhead, and bowls of goat's milk and barley porridge sweetened with honey. They offered Rig a place by their hearth, where embers glowed red beneath fragrant logs of birch and ash. That night, Rig lay between Afi and Amma, and when he left on the morning of the fourth day, Amma was with child. In time she bore a son named Karl. He grew swiftly, tall and fair of face, with keen eyes, chestnut hair, and strong limbs. He learned to tame oxen and build carts, to shape timber into houses and carve runes into doorframes for protection. He hunted with bow and spear, forged iron tools with the village smith, and sailed rivers to trade grain for furs and amber. Karl married a woman named Snore, who wore coloured beads upon her neck and wove fine cloth upon her loom. Together they had children who inherited their strength and skill. Their daughters learned spinning, brewing, cheese-making, and tending gardens of herbs and flax. Their sons learned tanning, hunting, and shaping wood into ploughs and oars. From them descended the carls, the free farmers and craftspeople who tended their own lands, governed by local law, bound to no master but the king, gods, and fate. Rig walked onward once more, his stride tireless, his cloak brushing dewy grass beneath dawn's pale light. At last, he came to a grand hall, tall and wide, with carved beams depicting wolves, ravens, and curling runic designs. Its roof was covered with gleaming shingles, and the smoke that rose from its chimney smelled of roasted meats and spiced ale. Here lived Fadir and Modir, father and mother. They welcomed Rig with formal grace, bidding him sit upon the high seat covered in embroidered cloth. Their servants brought platters of roast boar, fresh-baked bread glazed with butter, golden mead in drinking horns, and fruits gathered from summer's harvest. Candles burned in iron sconces upon carved posts, and the hall rang with laughter and song as Rig feasted among them. That night, Rig lay between Fadir and Modir, and when he departed upon the fourth morning, Modir carried his seed. In time she bore a son named Jarl. He was pale of skin and golden-haired, with sharp eyes and a proud gaze. As he grew, he learned runes and ancient lore, swordplay, horsemanship, and laws of kings and warriors. He rode swiftly upon strong horses, loosed arrows in flight that struck true, and brandished spear and shield with deadly grace. He spoke in measured words, commanding respect from elders and warriors alike. Jarl married a woman named Erna, wise and beautiful, skilled in weaving words as well as cloth. Their sons and daughters inherited their grace, intelligence, and strength. From them descended the Jarls, the noble class of lords, kings, and rulers who guided laws, led men in war, governed land and settlement, and offered sacrifices to the gods to ensure the peace and prosperity of their people. One day, as Jarl's sons practiced sword and spear play beneath the oaks that ringed their father's hall, Rig returned to them. He took the eldest aside, teaching him the deepest runes and songs of power, charms to heal wounds, calm storms, win the hearts of warriors, and rule wisely. He named this son Con the Young, from whom the line of kings would descend. And so Rig, who was Heimdall in secret, fathered the classes of humankind, Thrall, Carl, and Jarl, each with their own strengths, skills, and purpose within the world's grand design. This myth taught that humanity's divisions were woven by divine order, each role bearing honor when fulfilled with dignity, courage, and wisdom. In the long nights of winter, Norse families gathered around hearth fires and told the lay of Rig to teach children that whatever their birth, their deeds shaped their worth. Though thralls bore burdens, their labor sustained life. Though carls toiled in fields and workshops, their craft and courage built the villages and defended them. Though jarls ruled with sword and counsel, their duty was to uphold law, protect the land, and offer sacrifice to the gods for the well-being of all. Thus, Rig's journey wove humanity into the grand tapestry of Norse cosmology, rooted beneath Yggdrasil's branches, bound by fate, and watched over by gods who saw in each person, thrall, carl, or jarl, a vital thread in the eternal weaving of the world. I hope you enjoyed tonight's sleep story, exploring the entire world of Norse mythology, from the creation of the cosmos out of ice and fire, to the rise of gods and giants, the weaving of fate by the Norns, the heroism of Sigurd, the secrets of Odin's wisdom, and finally to Ragnarok and the rebirth of the world. If you're still awake, don't worry. Just allow your thoughts to drift like leaves upon a quiet stream. And if you'd like, you can always put on another of our videos to guide you deeper into rest tonight. There are many more peaceful histories, mythologies, and sleep stories waiting for you here on the channel. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you a calm and peaceful night's sleep wherever you are in the world.